As you must be going through the notes, I believe you must be finding the possibility of understanding these topics more easily. So today, as we are going to step in this given component of ethics in IR and corporate governance, as we are going to step into it, the first segment that we are going to pick up is national interest. So what is national interest according to all of you? Yes. What, according to all of you, is the segment of national interest? What do you understand by the term national interest? Yes, people, you can start typing. What is national interest? All right. Increasing soft and hard power. Okay. All right. Nation first. Okay. Benefit majority without undermining the minority. Very good, Montu. Interest of the larger masses of the societies. Okay. Very good, Vanshika. Um, Concern that affects India at mass level. Okay. All right. Sovereignty for larger public interest. Preservation of security of the country. All right, Sudipto. Protecting diaspora, everything done which is in the benefit of the country on the whole, betterment, thinking, things going skewed with mass level, interest, society, anything good for nation, interest of the society as a whole. Okay, okay, all right, all right. National integrity, safeguarding the nation, putting the country first. Okay. Political, social, and economic interest of the country. Okay, keeping nation above oneself. All right, fine. So as we are going to explore about like what is national interest, prioritize anything for nation as one family. Okay, fine. So to increase influence, all right, increase influence implies what, Monica? So all right, so that's what all of you understand with respect to like what is national interest. That is what you can connect with. This is the dimension. All right, okay. Good evening all the students who have wished and who have joined in last few minutes. Okay, so as we are discussing about what is national interest, let us like reflect upon what we can like connect with in terms of national interest. What do we understand or what do we imply by the term national interest? So with respect to national interest, you need to understand that there can be a narrow connotation and there can be a broader connotation, a wider connotation. So a narrow and a wider connotation when we are speaking of it, right? So, like as we are trying to understand the given dimension of national interest, let us understand what does it imply from the narrow interest. With respect to narrow connotation, when we are speaking of it, it is associated with what all of you understand. I don't know why the this is becoming what's happening. The touch screen is way too sensitive. Or am I too charged that the touch screen is just working to this? Means it's beyond the pen. It's also my like. All right. With respect to this, uh, okay, all right, maybe calibration. Okay, now, so with respect to this, when we are talking about narrow connotation, when we are discussing about national interest from narrow connotation, it is associated with economic prosperity. It can be associated with, like, as you people shared, that ma'am, it should be the security, it should be self preservation. Along with self preservation, you all were also speaking of like hard power, soft power. So we can also connect it with military security. Like we can connect it with growth, like cultural and wholesome growth. So when we are discussing about the component of national interest from a narrow connotation, this is what it implies. But when we are talking about it from wider connotation, we can connect it with international ties that we have, the kind of relationship we have with our neighborhood. Like we can connect it with the concept of brotherhood. We can connect it with the segment of, we can say, nuclear disarmament. Nuclear disarmament. So we can connect it with, we can say, a peaceful neighborhood. Right. So the basic principles of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is something which we can connect with this given segment when we are talking about it. The segment pertaining to the wider connotation of national interest. No, Aditya, it's also tomorrow. Otherwise, how would you complete certain segments? So, when we are discussing about this given subsegment pertaining to like wider connotation and narrow connotation, we can understand. Oh, goodness, what's wrong? Why is the screen so sensitive today? So, when we are speaking of this given subsegment associated with like the component of national interest, this is how we all can connect with this given dimension. So, with respect to, we can say, national interest, we all can reflect upon the possibility of what generally it is considered and what ought to be there in terms of a broader perspective, right? So, I hope all of you are able to connect with the idea. National interest, what you were perceiving, versus national interest, the way it should have been perceived, right? So I hope all of you are able to understand this given subsegment, right? So when we are moving ahead with this idea of national interest, it should be perceived that it is a subjective term. It is a subjective term which includes the priorities and interests of a state. Priorities and interests of a state. This is what the term national interest implies. Now, as all of you are able to connect with this given subsegment, you need to connect this given idea of national interest with respect to why we are discussing national interest from a broader perspective. So, from a broader perspective, if I am speaking about this given dimension, you need to understand that if our neighborhood is burning, it is impossible that the shards of fire, the cinders, will not fly off and burn our house. It is very important for us to have a peace and harmony in our wholesome existence in our neighborhood, because if there is a lack of peace around us, then we cannot like totally be at peace. That's why you see people prefer good neighborhood, they prefer healthy neighborhood. People refrain from any neighborhood which creates a negative implication per se, right? So when we are discussing about this given segment, you need to understand that the term national interest is not only associated with what is happening outside your nation, it is also associated with what is happening, sorry, what is happening inside your nation. It is also associated with what is happening outside the nation, around the nation, okay, and with the nation. All those possibilities are associated with the term national interest. All right. So when we are understanding it, the idea of national interest is associated with three theoretical perspectives. The first theoretical perspective is associated with idealism. And when we are talking about idealism, what do we imply? So, idealism is basically like, when you are endorsing a lot of ideals, when you are endorsing a lot of values, okay, that is something which can be associated with like the term nationalism. And sorry, that is the term which can be associated with what do we understand by idealism. Okay, so as we are like substantiating this given subdimension, let us like reflect upon the term idealism. That what is idealism? So idealism is, we can consider, it is playing the most important role, okay, at international level, because this is what India has been following for decades together. So most important role at international level. It Idealism is also associated with soft power. Okay, this term you should remember, it is associated with soft power. And when we are discussing about this, it is unethical at local level, unethical at local level, shall be unethical at international level. Okay, so is also unethical at international level. All right, so this is what is said with respect to it. Then further, when we are discussing about this given subsegment, you can also understand that, so in simple language, behavior that is considered immoral at national level shall also be considered immoral at international level. Behavior that is considered immoral at family level is also considered immoral at national level. Okay, so or international level. So that's what it is all about. So you can consider therefore dishonesty, violence, okay, dishonesty, violence, right? These concepts are to be avoided, okay, like has to be avoided at every level, at every level, right? This is something which we need to understand. Means what is good for a nation is good for, we can consider, the individual, and what is good for the individual shall be good for the nation, vice versa. What is good for the nation is good at international level, what is good for international level shall be good for the nation. Okay, so we can also connect it with the Gandhian concept of Sarvodaya, right? Just a second, what's happening? The pen is really working erratic today. So when we are speaking of this given subdimension, you can just connect it with, for example, Gandhiji's Sarvodaya. Gandhiji's Sarvodaya. And when we are speaking of Gandhiji's Sarvodaya, what did he say? That the illumination, the empowerment should not be restricted to one or few individuals. It should be associated with all the individuals across the world. So that's the concept which you can connect with. All right. You can also connect it with Tagore's universalism. Tagore's universalism. You can also connect it with Yudhishthira. You can connect it with Nehru. Right. In fact, Nehru's idealism was the reason responsible for the attack that happened in India coming from China. Right. So the Chinese aggression was associated with idealism per se. Okay. So too much of idealism also becomes harmful for a country. So we have to be very clear that to what extent we need to exercise idealism. Right. So there is, like, we need to understand this given possibility when we are discussing about idealism, that too much of idealism can also be problematic. All right, so with respect to, again, we can think of realism. Realism, what does realism say? So realism believes that, we can say, the state works only to increase its military power. So what is realism associated with? It is associated with military power. So state works for, we can consider, the strengthening of its military power, so that it can protect itself, from the world, which is harsh and dangerous. right? So when we are speaking of like realism, realism is associated with military power, whereas idealism is associated with soft power. Okay, so in idealism we are talking about ideals, local is global, global is local, whereas in like realism we are talking about enhancing our military power. We are talking about increasing the state's power to protect itself. We are also connecting it with the international organizations and bodies, that how they don't have any power when we are talking about in the face of real stress and challenge. Like if you see the role of United Nations role sometimes is so flimsy when we are comparing its role and seeing the kind of intervention that should have been taken by it, but how sometimes it becomes a puppet in the hands of the rich and the affluent countries, right? So we can understand that that's why it is considered that power and force is the one that truly exists. As long as there is power or force, like things get materialized, whereas in the absence of power or force, even the national interest cannot be protected. So this is what they consider. Who is the person, the thinker who can be associated with this given dimension? So for example, we can think of Machiavelli, because we have discussed about Machiavelli. You can think of this person, that is Kautilya. So Kautilya's Rajmandala theory, when we discuss about it. So Kautilya's Rajmandala theory, if I discuss about it, we all can connect it with the given subsegment, and we can consider that Kautilya's Rajmandala theory is associated with this given practice. That is, when we are talking about what is the theory of string of pearls theory, which China uses to surround India at different corners, whereby we can see that it has provided its military base in Bangladesh, then in Sri Lanka. You can think of Maldives. So entire Indian Ocean, it is trying to encircle India. Over here at land level, you can see it is funding in different pockets of Nepal, then Pakistan. So this is like nothing but unfolding of Rajmandala theory, whereby you threat your neighbor, because maximum threat that any country can experience can come from its neighbor. So containing one's neighbor is necessary. Now this Rajmandala theory is not something which only China is exercising. India, probably you can connect it with Quad, the formation of Quad, or the kind of support that India extends to Japan, to New Zealand, to Australia, to Southeast Asia, right? To Afghanistan, to Central Asia. All this is also done by India to a certain extent to surround we can say the power and the expansion and the emancipation done by China, right? So you can connect with, like we can consider Kautilya's string of pearl theory. In present times, you can think of China. Simultaneously, you can also think of, we can say, from history, if we are discussing about it, you can think of Hitler, you can think of Napoleon, right? Similarly, you can you can also further connect it with, we can consider Aurangzeb, right? So Aurangzeb, you can also connect it with, we can consider Ashoka. So there are like Ashoka before the Kalinga war, mind it. Aurangzeb in his initial phase of rule, Duryodhana, if you are thinking of Mahabharata. So all these people would be connected with the possibility of, we can say, military power or the theory of realism associated with national interest. That when they are trying to define their idea of national interest. All right. With respect to this, when we are further speaking about this given segment, we can reflect upon liberalism. Now, liberalism is yet another interesting, we can say, interpretation, which can be, goodness, I don't know why it is like so animated, the pen. So, when we are discussing about the possibility related to liberalism, we all can further associate it with the subsegment of we can say smart power. So, what is smart power? When we speak of smart power, it is a combination of, we can say, economic power, plus we can say military power, plus we can say uh, like plus we can say soft power. Okay, so a combination of all these three elements creates smart power. I hope all of you can connect with it. So smart power, when we are discussing about it, it is a byproduct of, we can say, globalization, information and communication, that the world is shrinking in its space. And as the world is shrinking in its place, in its space, we need a balance of all forms of power to be exercised so that no country coerces upon us, and at the same time we are able to further our interests not only at local or national level but also international level. So very briefly, if I speak of liberalism, so liberalism emphasizes, we can say, broad ties amongst states, okay. So it emphasizes broad ties amongst states. We can also consider that it is associated with the um, decreasing of the military decreasing of the military power, means we should not keep military power in priority. Okay, so decreasing of the military power, or decreasing of the usefulness, I should say, the usefulness of military power. Okay, along with that you can also connect it with, we can say, like it is associated with increasing globalization. It is associated with increasing globalization. It is associated with rapid, we can say, rise in communication technology, rapid rise in communication technology, and also international trade, and the increase in international trade, increase in international trade. So what does this imply when we are speaking of it? It means that the states can no longer rely simply on the basis of power politics. Okay, so countries can't rely only on power politics to decide matters, to decide the matters, to decide the matters related to a country's well-being. So related to the country. So it is not something which is simply associated with power politics. It is now something more than that. So we all can see that, ethics is taking a very integral role. Earlier, we had an idealist standpoint. India had an idealist standpoint, and that's the reason why we see that India's idealist behavior has also shaped the possibility of non-aligned movement. It has shaped the possibility of maintaining international peace at all levels, but at the same time it has also created like a lot of coercion. It has led to a lot of, we can say, challenges or possibilities. Yes, Femina, you can connect it with the regional peace process as well. So US can be an example in context of India in liberalism. Yeah, you can connect with that. In US has been exercising liberalism for quite some time, right? So when we are speaking of this given possibility, we all can understand that, when post independence, India has been quite actively associated with international affairs, but with the perspective of idealism, the approach of idealism, as you can see it over here on the board, right? So this is what we can consider when we are discussing about this idea of idealism. nationalism. So with respect to, we can, when we are talking about internationalism, or when we are talking about national interest from a wider connotation, we can also see that the very possibility of idealism can be reflected when we are like substantiating it. We can reflect the subsegments associated with idealism. With respect to article, we can say 51. So article 51 of the constitution, if I discuss about it, you can see it is associated with DPSP, which suggests promotion of international peace, security, right? It is associated with maintaining a just and honorable, we can say, relationship, international relationship. Third, we can also see that it is connected to fostering respect for international relations, for international law. It is associated with, treaties and obligations between nations. It is also associated with encouraging settlement with respect to like international disputes, right? So we can see that article 15, even article 37 can be written over here. Article 37 suggests of the constitution, which is associated with DPSP, that also talks about the fundamentals that ought to be followed in the process of governance. And that is something whereby we see that it suggests that our like policy, our government's policy must be in line with international peace when we are discussing about this given segment, right? So with no problem, Vivek, you just pinch and just zoom it. The moment you'll zoom it, you can read it. Okay. And anyway, you'll take a printout, so you will be able to read. You can listen to the explanation if possible. Listen to the explanation, and I think you will be able to get this idea. Under which subheading will Vallabhbhai Patel come, and as he is united India for its national interest. Oh, Vallabhbhai Patel can be associated with, we can say, this realism. Okay, so when it is happening, like if needed, first you are talking with idealism. If idealism is not working, you are mixing realism. Military power is being exercised. That's what you can connect. So yes, we can, when we are discussing about this further ahead, we can reflect. Suppose you get a question related to this national policy only, even before just war theory, probably I'll just give you some more idea. So suppose if you get a question associated with Nehru's, we can say, foreign policy, okay, and if the question is associated with Nehru's foreign policy, and what is it based on, okay, Nehru's foreign policy, and how it is associated with which kind of theory. So Nehru's foreign policy, or we can say post independence India's foreign policy. So post independence, the ethics in IR that India followed. So this is something which you can connect it with, like we can say, the ideals of Panchashil. So Panchashil was associated with the 5 principles associated with peaceful coexistence which Jawaharlal Nehru spoke of. And that is inspired by the principles of Buddhism. We can see that it also lays down the code of ethics for international relation, right? So you can recall Panchashil. After Panchashil, you can further connect it with NAM, the non-aligned movement. The non-aligned movement, so when we are talking about it, you can give 3 reasons for it. So first and foremost, India went for non-aligned movement because it was a nascent country, it was a freshly independent country. So India said that we need to focus on our social economic development rather than becoming a part of any ally or any military group. It will not be conducive to our development. This is what India gave as an explanation. Second explanation that India spoke of related to why it is going for non-aligned movement was that India has always been a peace-loving nation since ancient time. It has never been a part of any military ally internationally, even in past. So it will refrain to do so or continue to do any such thing. Again, third logic, when we are talking about it, correct? So third logic was associated with, we can consider, that was given, that a world which is already torn apart into allies, which is divided into two contrasting blocks, and when, countries are vying and dying to kill each other, to fight each other out, in that situation we need a third block which talks about strengthening peace, which talks about establishing harmony and order, so that there is a body, there is a block which is there to mediate, which is there to bring in the, we can say, balance. Okay, henceforth Nehru's foreign policy, you can see, is heavily guided by idealism. Okay, so I'm just writing this word so that you remember it later. Okay, so you can again connect this with nuclear doctrine of India. When I'm discussing about this nuclear doctrine of India, so you all know that India's nuclear doctrine was associated with no first use, and we also spoke of minimum credible deterrence, right? Minimum credible deterrence. So we aspired to create, we can consider, we aspired to create a world that was free from nuclear energy, which was free from any kind of abuse of nuclear technology. When Nehru started the nuclear disarmament movement with across the world, at the same time he reached out to, like, our scientist, that is Homi Jahangir Bhabha, and he requested Homi Jahangir Bhabha to carry out experimentations on nuclear technology. Now, will we consider it to be hypocrisy? Can we consider that Nehru had a hypocrite stand related to nuclear policy? No, not really. We'll be like, that will be unfair to say so, for the simple reason that when we are speaking of the possibility of bringing in a qualitative intervention related to, we can say, international policy, we all can reflect upon the kind of intervention that is required, the kind of, we can say, meaningful intervention that is needed. So we can see that, suppose I'm saying that if Nepal says this to US, that okay, don't worry, I forgive you, we will laugh at this statement, we will not take this statement seriously. But if China says, or Russia says this to India, this to US, that I'm forgiving you, or I forgive you, that will have a lot of loaded weightage as well as multiple international connotations. So when we are discussing about this given statement, that why India had a nuclear doctrine policy whereby we were going for nuclear disarmament, and at the same time we were going for research in nuclear technology. So it was because if you don't have teeth, no one is going to take you seriously. And before you speak of forgiveness, you should be capable to forgive. Before you speak of kindness, you should be capable of kindness. Before you speak of, harmony and peace, you should be capable of, inflicting a challenge upon harmony and peace. It is then that people take you seriously. So only when we are nuclearized and then we speak of denuclearization, that the world would take us seriously. And for this, I can quote Dr. Ramdhari Singh Dinkar, who was also MP Rajya Sabha and a very noted Hindi poet. So he said, I noted this poetry for all of you. So he had said that सहनशीलता क्षमा दया को तभी पूजता जग है, कल का दीपक चमकता उसके पीछे जब जगमग है. This implies that if anyone is talking about forgiveness, if anyone is talking about kindness, if anyone is speaking about, having compassion, all these make sense, all these are revered, all these are trusted only when, someone is capable of exercising it, only when someone is illuminated, empowered to exercise the power, and then the person is talking about kindness or forgiveness, benevolence, it will make sense. Okay, so when we are talking about the idea of peace, when we are talking about, we can consider the idea associated with, we can say, forgiveness, when we are talking about the idea of tolerance, we need to be very clear that we need to be powerful enough to forgive, we need to be strong enough to talk about the possibility associated with, we can say, international cooperation based on harmony. Only when we are able to stagger, or we are able to stir some kind of conflict and destabilize, and yet we are talking about stability, we are talking about harmony, then only it makes a lot of sense. I hope that's making an insight. You are able to connect with this given subsegment, right? Atalji was under which category? Atalji, when you're thinking of during Kargil war, so he'll be associated with realism, and when we are talking about post Kargil war strategy, it will be associated with this liberalism, because he started track 2 diplomacy. He started with the Pakistani premier, he started a bus to Islamabad, right? So he started exchange program of students, cultural program, sports, right? So a lot of track 2 diplomacy was encouraged by him. So that is liberalism. But when he went for war, and the world and a lot of international theorists, they said that the war was not needed, it was unnecessary. So and declaration of war costed life. Costed lives, as well as a lot of national, we can say, resources, a lot of money. So when that passion associated with war was played, but at the same time, Atalji said that one of our very integral or crucial posts, Tiger Hill, as you know, and along with Tiger Hill, few other strategic hills were captured by the Pakistani army. It was important to free those hills, because from there one could monitor large tracts of land of India, and it was easy to pose a threat or an attack in the near future. So that's why the war became an inevitable necessity. So in that situation, the approach goes with military power, or we can say the component related to realism. Okay, now, so can we quote these sentences? Yes, you can quote the sentences, but mind it, don't write in Hindi, always write in English, because the examiner at any point is not bound to evaluate your answer in any other language other than the language that you have committed to write. So even though Hindi and English both are official languages of India, if a student of Hindi medium tries to quote a lot of English quotations and does not furnish Hindi translation, the child will be caught. Same is with English medium students. If English medium students are quoting quotations from Sanskrit, or quotations in Hindi, quotations in Tamil, quotations in Gujarati, quotations in Kashmiri, the examiner doesn't care till the time the original translation is provided, the correct translation is provided. It's not the original language or source, it is the translation that matters. All right. So that is what we can speak of. So with respect to this liberalism type of national interest with Bhutan, presently, Nikhil, we are exercising liberalism. The present course, or rather I can say post LPG reforms, post 1990s, India slowly and steadily started moving towards liberalism. All right. Now, so with respect to this, yes, you can translate the quotes and you can write it in essay as well as ethics. In both the papers, quotations will be welcome. Don't do quotations in paper 1, 2, and 3 of GS. That Nehru's foreign policy, after Nehru's foreign policy, because we are discussing post independent ethics in IR, or post independence, the foreign policy that India followed. So I will further substantiate it from here. So I will discuss this refugee policy. Now, India has one of the highest number of refugees in the world. We have refugees coming from all parts of the world. So our refugee policy is neither formal, we have no formal policy. We do not follow the norms of UN when it comes to refugee policy. Otherwise, a lot of refugees will have to be removed, or will have to be taken out of this country. Whereas we can see refugees from all corners, like not just from Pakistan and Nepal, and from we can say Tibet, and further we can see it from Myanmar, we can see it from Bangladesh, we can see from Sri Lanka, coming to India, but also some other parts of the world also, where there is strained hostility. Then also we can see that refugees are like pouring in. So India doesn't have any strict refugee policy. And there has been international pressure of UN on India that we should have a distinct and a clear refugee policy. But let's see when we are going to come up with it. So we have from like Bangladesh also we have refugees. We have like refugees, Tamil refugees coming from Sri Lanka, Rohingyas coming from, we can say, Myanmar. So different parts, Madhesis from Nepal, all of it. So India has a very liberal democratic policy when it comes to this refugee policy. Again, when we are speaking of this given dimension, we can also see India contributes to UN peacekeeping force, right? So we can say that UN peacekeeping force. So earlier, India was the country which has been highest contributor in the peacekeeping force. Just recently, China surpassed the number. Now it is the Chinese army which is highest in number in terms of like supporting the peacekeeping force in UN. Okay. Further, after this, you can also reflect upon, we can say, after UN peacekeeping force, you can talk about unilateral assistance or Gujral Doctrine. So, Gujral Doctrine or unilateral assistance. So, what is this unilateral assistance associated with when we are discussing about it? So, with respect to it, we can connect this given dimension that this our Prime Minister I.K. Gujral, he came up with this device of unilateral assistance, and we all can consider it with respect to the unique approach we have or we created, because this was like laying a foundation stone to a new pattern in international relations, our ethics associated with international relations. So, Dr. I.K. Gujral, what he did was that he introduced a new possibility. As you can see, the term unilateral assistance means you are not expecting anything in return. You are just assisting a country to develop peace, to develop democracy, to develop harmony. For example, like getting the, we can say, the parliament building being built in Afghanistan. We can also connect it with libraries being built in Afghanistan. Libraries will intellectually nourish, parliament will encourage democracy. We can also see building roads in Afghanistan. So that will increase trade and commerce. Any country which is indulging heavily in trade and commerce, and when people are benefiting out of it, they will refrain from going for war. They will refrain from waging any kind of conflict towards their neighbors. So that was an initiative to maintain national interest only. This unilateral assistance indirectly is also associated with national interest. You can also connect it with the our approach related to Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, especially for the, like, the Tamil Ellam, the government of India, it like built a lot of houses, houses so that the kind of protection that is needed for the Tamil population living in Sri Lanka is created, so that all the devastation, all the problems which the Tamil Ellam experienced in the hands of, we can say, Rajapakse government, or even in the hands of the Sri Lankan, we can say, police and army, that is somewhere doused, so that if peace is in their lives, there will be peace in that southern region. Okay, no kind of attack or no kind of strain would be caused. So hence we need to understand that when we are talking about India's level of ethics in international relation, in present times you can connect it with this segment as well, that is unilateral assistance as well. Okay, so with respect to this, we can like contain the possibility that it is just a gesture in good faith, and this gesture in good faith is associated with maintaining like more order, more harmony. Okay, so you can consider this, that gesture based on good faith, peaceful neighborhood, peaceful neighborhood creates peace in the country Okay, so that's something which you can connect with. Along with this, we all can consider when we are discussing about this given segment that so in Sri Lanka, building homes for the homeless. You can also connect it with Afghanistan. And here you can talk about like constructing the parliament building. You can connect it with library. You can connect it with roads, right? So what should come first, like national interest or ethics? So no leader can deny that it should be national interest. Okay, always it should be like whenever we are talking about ethics, ethics should be in light of national interest, and we need to understand that they are not separate goals, they are not different goals. Ethics and national interest are intertwined, they are associated with each other. National interest, as it is connected with peace, harmony, nuclear disarmament, okay, good relationships in the neighborhood, it is somewhere connected with exercising of ethics itself. So that's how you are supposed to reflect upon this given topic, all right, when we are discussing about this given segment. When we are further moving ahead, so Nehru on internationalism, if you get a question, please read Nehru well, because in history, in IR, in polity, in ethics, anywhere Nehru's internationalism can be raised, anywhere we can expect a question associated with Nehru's internationalism. So it is expected from all of you to have a clarity of the concept per se. Then we move ahead with just war theory. Okay, in just war theory, ethics of one country might be unethical for another. Yes, if one country is on idealism and second is on militarism. So Nehru's idealism, and we can see it was China's realism. So China believed that the right thing to do is to attack India. India believed that trusting China is the right thing to do. And that is something which led to the confronting situation, the conflicting situation. And like India bore the cost of it. And that is how we all could see that India like paid the price via war, right? Anyway, just war theory, as we are reflecting upon this. Now, my question related to just war theory is, which was the thinker who was associated with just war theory that I had taught to you day before yesterday? That will prove how many of you are revising. Oh, very good, Payal. Yes, yes, okay, Ravi, fine, yes, just war theory. Okay, very good, Baldev. Yes, no, it was not that, Basaya. And Ravi, your answer is half. Yes, Pravalika, that's correct. That's correct. Ambika and Sulekha, Abhishek, Nirmala, all those students who are like thinking of Thomas Aquinas, that's perfectly correct. So when we are discussing about just war theory, you can connect him with like this concept with Thomas Aquinas discussed previously. And what do we imply by just war? I told you that we can consider the principles that we follow, principles followed before, after, and during war. Before, during, and after war. Right. So that is something which we can connect. Again, the question is, can war be just? Right? Can war be just? Can we consider that a war can be just? वो स्क्रीन अब तो नहीं वो टच वाला भागेगा ना? Okay, hope for the best. I think I'm good. Yes, all right. Welcome back. No, the audio and video was not working because I had switched off the audio and we like shut the video because of the technical glitch. All right. Now everything is fine. Some people are so happy, like all giggles and cheers. Yeah. I mean, just because the video was shut, some people are like, ha 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 ha, God knows why. Okay, all right. So with respect to this, we can talk about just war theory. All right. So when we are going to start with this given concept related to the like component of just war theory, let us understand what it is. So I shared this fact which all of you are already aware of with respect to just war theory, that it was given by Thomas Aquinas, and he discussed about principles that should be followed in war, as in followed before war, followed during war, and followed after war. Then there is the statement that can war be considered just? Like, is the term like is just war an oxymoron? Can we consider the term just war as oxymoron? Okay, so is just war an oxymoron? Can we consider this term to be an oxymoron, right? So that is something which all of us need to understand. Okay, oxymoron, you understand, two contradictory words put together. Okay, so like just and war, because if war is there, a lot of unethical practice, abuse, killing shall happen, right? So with respect to this, we need to understand that can just or fairness be maintained in war? That's the question which is raised in just war theory. Okay, so in like Mahabharata, it is used as the term dharma yuddha. Dharma, moral code of conduct. So the moral code of conduct, like charging a war, like we can say guiding a war. So when we are speaking of this, those people who, like when we are talking about the principles, we need to understand that those people who are participating in the war, are they doing it voluntarily out of their own choice, or are they getting forced into a war, coerced into a war? If they are doing it voluntarily because of pressing situations, if it is more like a bottom up approach, then in that situation it will be a just war. But if it is coerced upon them, if they are forced to participate, like in South Korea, sorry, South Korea, I said, in North Korea, so in that situation, it will not be considered as a just war. So people ought not to be like forced, okay, ought not to be forced. So in this given segment, oxymoron, I hope you understood, Baldev, when there is like contradiction existing together, opposites existing together, right? So yes, as Lord Krishna said that like war should be the last option. Yes, very good. So yes, for example, the Bangladesh liberation war, the Mahabharata war, it is considered as a just war. Now, so with respect to the principles, please do remember the principles. There is no shortcut to it. Do remember the theory. Okay, so principles of just war, when we discuss about it, so the first principle that you can take up is that war can be waged only as the last resort. War can be waged only as the last resort. Only as the last resort. Okay, so if we see that, like any kind of war which is coerced upon, it should not be the first choice. It should not be the choice whereby all options have yet not been exhausted. All the options, when they have been exhausted to maintain peace and harmony, and then a country is going for war, in that situation it qualifies on one of the categories of just war. Now, when we are discussing about it, I can also give you the example of 2016 Chilcot report. The Chilcot report was associated with UK. It said that United Kingdom cannot be freed from the responsibility of jumping into a war against like Iraq when it was not needed, when all options of peaceful negotiation with Iraq were not exhausted. So it was like it seemed as if UK was restless to jump into the war rather than there being an inevitable political or economic necessity to wage a war. So when we are discussing about war, war should never be associated with, we can say, like a possibility which is like just exercise to coerce power, to exercise power. Okay, it should be something like an inevitable necessity. Okay, when all other options are through. Second, we can say war is only waged when war is only waged when it is started by a legitimate authority. By a legitimate authority. And who is the legitimate authority? So, for example, you can think of governments or international agencies. So, governments or international bodies. For example, you can think of UN, you can think of NATO. All right. You cannot consider like a war when it is started by Boko Haram, war if it is started like any kind of conflict, I should say. Conflict started by Boko Haram, conflict started by ISIS, conflict started by like Shiv Sena. Like, let us say a Shiv Sena leader claiming that we are going to eliminate Pakistan from the face of earth. Let the person shout. Okay. The person, when is making such a sloganeering, when the person is like raising such we can consider insight in that situation, the person is not waging a war, like a just war, because the body or that party or that group, that community does not have the power, does not have the power to exercise a war, to declare a war. If there is conflict between two agencies, bodies, groups, it is considered as a conflict. War can only be legitimate, war can only be exercised by a country. Like, mind that given possibility. War can never be like started, it can never be initiated by any kind of random organization, local, regional, okay, whatever it is. It cannot be started by a random organization. An authorized, recognized international organization or a government can only start a war. I hope all of you are understanding. That's why if Naxals, separatists, terrorists, LTTE, such bodies, militants, they are claiming a war, they are talking about a war, it is not falling theoretically under the term war. Okay, it can be a conflict, regional dispute, regional conflict, but it cannot qualify as a war. All right. So, when we are discussing about this given segment, so war is waged only when it is started by a legitimate authority. That's what is considered under the just war theory. Again, the third important segment which all of you can bring in is that we can consider um, just war should be fought, should be fought in self defense. Just war should be fought in self defense, not aggression. Not aggression. So here you can recall the attack of US on Japan post Pearl Harbor. Okay, so I'm not saying that that attack was a just war, but the initiation of US by what Japan did, by devastating the Pearl Harbor, by causing so much of loss of life, loss of, we can say, loss of property. We can say that when we are reflecting upon that given situation, we all can understand that the triggering was not fair, the triggering was not justified. So if, as a retaliation, if US would have waged a war, attacked the Japanese army or anything as such, then it would have been considered as just war. Now, why did I not talk about the nuclear attack? Okay, on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, because that was not justified. I'll explain why. Because that's also qualifying under one of the principles. But please remember that just war is to be fought in self defense. It should not be in aggression. It should not be something like for territorial expansion, or for like having a definite control on a region. You are just going for like attacking a specific country or attacking a specific region. All right. So that's something which has to be understood. Again, we can connect it with the given possibility that no war is like necessarily straightforward when we are talking about in terms of winning it. Like, for example, if I talk about the possibility of what happened, what US did in Afghanistan, in Vietnam, it cannot be justified, and no amount of coercion has really led to any victory. Can we consider that what US did in Vietnam was leading to victory? Can it be considered ever a victory? Similarly, containment, in the name of containment of Taliban in Afghanistan, could it really contain Taliban? Could it really stop Taliban? Another question is that when we are talking of US with respect to Afghanistan, it tried its level best with all its military might and power and, interventions that it could carve or it could articulate. Still, could it really save the possibility of suppressing all those, we can say, forces against which US was rising? No. So in war, you need to understand that war is something which is not healthy. It is not something which leads to any meaningful peaceful solution. Many a times it is like unnecessary, and many a times it leads to loss of like civilian lives, it leads to loss of a lot of resources, it disturbs the peace and equanimity of a country, the political integration of a country, it disturbs the hope of the people to aspire further. Okay, it just breaks the self respect and sometimes the courage of a country. So war is something which should not be waged in any condition, and it should be avoided as far as it can be concerned with. Okay, so when we are speaking of this given segment, okay, we need to understand that when we are talking about this given segment, that for every given situation related to war, we should understand that the war leads to loss on both sides, so it has to be avoided in all conditions. So probably I can again give you: war leads to loss on both sides, hence needs to be avoided as far as possible, needs to be avoided as far as possible. Again, you can speak of another segment related to it. That is, you can bring in the possibility of, like, let's say, the ultimate goal of just war. So the ultimate goal of just war is to re-establish, okay, is to re-establish peace. Okay, so was peace established in Iraq? No. Was it established in Afghanistan? No, not really. So that's why it's not considered a just war. Another thing which you need to understand is violence, the nature of violence. So we can talk about violence um, used in a war, used in a war, okay, should be proportionate, should be proportionate to the injury suffered, to the injury suffered. Now you can understand why I said that attack on Japan, the nuclear attack, was not justified, because the nature of attack was not proportional. The retaliation was far more severe. 95% of the civilians of Hiroshima and Nagasaki died. Okay, so it cannot be considered as a just war, because the intensity or the proportion was way too tremendous. Another reflection which you can have associated with this given area is, like, when we are talking about the component of just war, you can also reflect upon this segment that the Israel and Palestine the contradiction, when Israel and Palestine, they both fight. So we all can connect this given subsegment of Israel and Palestine, that why do we consider that Israel's move to Palestine is something which cannot be justified? For the simple reason that Palestine, they have like very small baby missiles. They carry them in carts, like Hamas carries it in carts, and 200, 300 missiles they will throw, and out of which like only two or three will land on some building, and it will destroy some building. Whereas when Israel just throws one missile, it can destroy like something around 300 to 500 buildings in a go. So the intensity or the proportion of damage that is caused is very different. Another thing which you can see is that the civilians are the ones who tend to get killed. So that is something because of which it can be considered that it's not a justified move by any rhyme or reason. Okay, so violence used in a war, when we are talking about it, it should be proportionate to the injury suffered. I hope you all are understanding this. Okay, another segment which we all can again connect with is ultimate goal of just war is to re-establish peace. How tough is that, Neha? I mean, how tough is that? Ultimate goal of just war is to just establish peace. Means, I mean, why was US fighting in Afghanistan? In the name of establishing peace. Could it establish peace? No, not really. Fourth sentence is war leads to loss on both sides. Hence, it needs to be avoided as far as possible. Right? Okay. So, Onkar, I hope that's clear. So, yeah, we'll get back to Ukraine. Vivek, let us just slowly and steadily climb up to it. So, with respect to this, when we are discussing about it, legitimate, you wrote legitimate. Huh? Where have I written legitimate? War leads to both sides, hence needs to be avoided as far as possible. And ultimate goal of just war is to re-establish peace. Where have I written legitimate? Where are you reading? I mean, war is only waged when it is started by a legitimate authority. That's second point. Yeah, so what is the question? What is the second question? Like, what is the question? You said legitimate. Yes, I said legitimate. What's the question? I mean, either you are not paying attention, okay? Either you're not paying attention, so or like randomly this is being just typed. Second point, second point. What do I imply by that? Anyway, SME, just support me with the example. Students want approval of example and connectivity of the theory with example, which is again necessary. So please like support them with the correct answers. Meanwhile, I'll just like carry forward with another principle related to just war. So we can connect it with weapons, the nature of weapons that are used. So you can just write that the weapons used in a war must must discriminate between the combatants. Combatants means army, paramilitary, police. So must discriminate between combatants and non-combatants. Non-combatants. So must discriminate between combatants and non-combatants. So non-combatants, when we are talking about it, it's like civilian areas. They should not be touched, right? So that's something which you can connect with. So Second World War, you can think of it, right? So you can think of Second World War, and you can think of this given possibility associated with the Second World War, and how like in Germany like was targeted, the civilians of Germany were targeted by United Kingdom purposefully. UK purposefully dropped bombs and attacked those areas where civilians were like residing. Okay, so even breaking the backbone of Japan, we could see that US dropped a nuclear bomb like in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So we need to understand this given possibility that like when it is not maintained, it's not considered as a just war. Again, never glorify war. Never glorify war. It should There should be no chest beating and chest thumping and saying, "Wow, we did this, we did that." No, treated. War should be treated as a tragic necessity. As a tragic necessity. All right. So you need to understand that we need to stay strong to what? So therefore, we can say in other language, we can say the strong and affluent nations do what they want, and the weak do what they must, and the weak do what they must. All right. So here you can also talk about some role is there, or rather, we can say in simpler language, I can say that if needed, some or the other rules and regulations are broken. Even Mahabharata, which is considered as a just war, is not so just because some rules were bent or broken even in Mahabharata. You can recall the case of Ashwathama and the way Guru Dronacharya was treated. Or you can recall how Guru Dronacharya, before going for war, when like he was a young teacher and a young disciple, the tribal boy Eklavya appeared, how he like eliminated him from the possibility of any future war. So why, getting his thumb. So when we are talking about the given possibility related to just war, that's why it's considered that there is no crime, or there is no um, possible types of deviance that is not depicted in Mahabharata. That's why Mahabharata is not considered as a religious book. It is considered as a book of moral inquiry, as I have quoted it by and by earlier also. Because just imagine a teacher is taking the thumb of a disciple, and the disciple has not been directly trained. That just the disciple said that I was overhearing you by hiding in the bushes and making a clay statue of you. I was practicing, like taking your name and recalling what all you had taught to the princes. And on that basis, he was like, oh my god, none of the is as skilled as this boy. So the king can punish me for that reason. That how come this regular urchin is like having better skills than my boys? You failed as a guru. So he was so intimidated by the thought of it that he got the permanent damage to that tribal boy, like eliminating his thumb. So when we speak of this component of just war, justice exercising in society by the people who are powerful, no, not always. Okay, so that's there we when we can understand that, right? So if you don't have any principles, that's also a problem. Like for example, Hitler. If you have too many principles, that is also a problem, like Nehru. So we need to understand that we need to have a balanced approach. Okay, so we need to have a balanced approach. And by balanced approach, what I imply to say, that we need to have, we can say, a liberal approach, plus if and when needed, we need to have a carrot and stick approach. Carrot and stick means reward and punishment. Okay, so carrot and stick policy, that is something which is going to keep the situation under check. Okay, so Patel also used this liberal approach plus carrot and stick policy, that is realism, which I was talking about. So in integration of states, persuasion was also being done, and coercion or force was also used, right? And that's why you see Yudhishthira, after the end of Mahabharata, the war, he said that there are no victors in the war. Victory feels like defeat to me. Okay, there are no victors in the war. Victory feels like defeat to me. So that is something which you can connect with, right? So today we all can understand that no one can like actually win a war, with especially the theory of mutually assured destruction, the MAD theory, and having nuke weapons. We cannot consider that we can really go for a completely violence free possibility of a war, or a balanced possibility of a war. So we need to really avoid that given subsegment, right? So here we can also reflect upon, when we are discussing about ethics in IR. So ethics in IR is associated with national interest, then ethics in IR with respect to international funding. Basically speaking, when we are talking about ethics in international funding, so why is funding done in by international organizations? So there is the component of reward and punishment. Okay, so we can consider that funding is done as reward and punishment, as a tool for attitude change, right? So if you are funding for education, in a country where there is poor levels of education and the country is getting torn by civil war like condition. Maybe the governments are overthrown, militancy is coming in, or some kind of coercive power is being exercised. In such a country, you can bring attitude change when you are funding for a library, when you are funding for books, when you are funding for teachers, when you are funding for, we can say, democracy in that country. Okay, so it can be associated with bringing attitude change. So funding is a tool to bring change in the attitude of developing countries, okay, developing or even underdeveloped countries. So it is not wrong when we are funding. The most important thing is the reason for funding. The reason for funding shall be ethical, shall be ethical. At all times it shall be ethical. It shall not be used for manipulation as US does for Pakistan. So it shall not be done for manipulation. It shall not be done for manipulation when we are speaking of it. So for manipulation, if it is done, then it will be considered unethical. If it is for persuasion, it is fine. Remember, manipulation versus persuasion, we had discussed it earlier in attitude, right? Recall all that. Okay, it is ethical if it is for persuasion. Those students who cannot recall what is persuasion, you are supposed to visit the class notes that was discussed. I had given you the in the slide difference between manipulation and persuasion. So I don't want any student unethically asking this question, ma'am, please tell us the difference between persuasion and manipulation, because I don't want any student who is lazy to study, lazy to revise, okay, get a benefit of doubt. You're supposed to get stuck here and you're supposed to revisit. Okay, that's how I create interlinkage between past lecture and present lecture, and that's how this is my way of making you ethical, accountable, disciplined. Okay, because it is an ethics class, so it is supposed to be encouraging you at all levels, isn't it? So yes, so when we are talking about this, you can further reflect upon the component associated with persuasion and reward and punishment. The second subsegment which you can think is like reward and punishment. It has always been an important tool, so you can think of unconditional regard. Unconditional regard should be there for what? So unconditional regard for peace, altruism. Now, I have discussed this term again in the past, altruism. So, no student will ask SME or me, ma'am, what is altruism? You're supposed to memorize the meaning by now. It has been used so many number of times in the class, right? So, for peace, for altruism, fraternity, see how lovingly I coerce all of you to go ahead for preparing well, right? So we can think of like persuasion. Okay, it can be for humanity. It can be associated with compassion and empathy, right? So it can be associated with compassion. We can associate it with justice, for rights, for duty, right? And duty. So this will be considered as ethical. Okay, but if, like, let us say, if um, funding is done, funding is done to maintain hegemony, narrow self interest, so narrow self interest, greed, violence, okay, inequality, inequality, manipulation, and control. Manipulation and control. Then, in that situation, we will consider this kind of international funding as unethical. All right, that's so simple. So, after Second World War, the kind of funding, if all of you can recall, that was associated with, we can say, the Cold War, whereby allies were getting created. that is considered as unethical funding. That's not something which you are supposed to support. So to make a country communist or to make a country capitalist, or we could also see that the possibility of containment of the expansion of US, containment of expansion of Russia. So we could, or rather USSR. So US created Taliban for containing Russia, and then the Taliban got divided. So the one which supported US was called good Taliban. The one which did not support US was called bad Taliban. So all this is associated with, we can say, nature of funding that happened at international level, and how it was somewhere associated with the given possibility of, we can say, with respect to the sensitivity, with respect to the challenges which unfolded before all of us, right? Which designed the nature of international funding and the course of, we can say, development at international level. So that's something which you can connect with, right? So you can just connect it also with, we can say, World Bank conditionalities for funding. World Bank conditionalities for funding. So where it aspires to promote, we can say, LPG reforms. That's how it coerced India. So in India, we could also see that though Mrs. Gandhi, after the disintegration of USSR, or even during that time period when USSR was getting weak, Mrs. Gandhi, she moved towards certain interventions which were quite private in nature. But privatization of India had not taken place. After Mrs. Gandhi's death, again we see that the governments, respective governments, they tried to save the situation, but they were unable to create that given possibility. Then what happened was that VP Singh, he pledged a lot of gold in the Bank of England. It was a temporary relief but not a permanent one. Later we see Gulf War happens. After Gulf War, the price of crude oil, it just shot up. Because of that, we suffered from heavy loss of like foreign reserve. So we reached out to World Bank for more money, and to which World Bank, it pushed certain conditionalities that you have to go for LPG reforms. You have to cut down on subsidies. Like we can see, again, if we are talking about, for example, we can say that WTO, it coerces to cut down on agricultural subsidies. So we can connect it with that given possibility also. So, and when we are speaking of all of this, this is called the Washington Consensus. That whatever is done, it is like to create a consensus in Washington. When Washington consensus is there, like all the money, resources, etc., will flow. So after the second generation reforms, World Bank conditionalities, we can see that terms like equality, inclusive growth, fraternity, sustainable development, democracy, human rights, all these are in past 30 years they gained a lot of momentum. Okay, so that's you can consider. So now we can see that funding has become kind of ethical. So, like, let's say another segment with respect to it we can consider is mutually beneficial. If funding is mutually beneficial, then it will be considered ethical in international funding. Like, for example, we can think of, we can say, Japan funding India. Japan funding India. And when we are discussing about Japan funding India, like for example, making metros 4 lane or 8 lane or 6 lane corridors. So India is also paying it back via taxes, right? So it's a win-win for both. Japan is also getting return for its investment, and India is getting heavy infrastructure along with good quality technology. And we need to understand that Japan, in terms of its strength of youth population, it has almost saturated. Its development has almost saturated. So with all the funds, it cannot just sit idle. So that's why we can see it is quite interested to invest in India with respect to different developmental projects, even for the development of Northeast, because containment of China. So India also wants it, Japan also wants it. Japan can establish a connection whereby it can say that there is connection of Buddhist culture, the connection with respect to the architecture, connection with respect to the like geographical terrain, so the kind of housing, the kind of infrastructure, the kind of developmental intervention that is needed in Northeast can be similar to that of Japan, right? So that's also there, which we all can connect with this given dimension when we are talking about mutually beneficial. If it is mutually beneficial, it is ethical. Like, for example, we can think of India and Japan. India and Japan, like this is, we can consider ethical funding, whereby both are benefiting from it. All right. So, both benefiting from it. So, that's why we need to have a bird's eye view. We need to have a wholesome approach, okay, to a holistic approach, to have a better understanding of the term international funding, right? As all of you are understanding this bit, we can reflect upon this 2022 question. See this, Russia Ukraine, I said this, that we will be reflecting upon this. It's saying Russia and Ukraine war has been going on for last 7 months. Now this is a fact. This is how you learn how to like decode a question, open a question. So this is a factual statement. Okay, fine. Next, different countries have taken independent stands and actions keeping in view their own national interest. Okay, so different countries, different independent stand, national interest. So the topic of national interest comes, how a country is responding towards this Russian Ukrainian war. So, if a country is talking about pro military or anti military, we can connect it accordingly with realism or not believing in realism. You can think it with respect to liberal countries, will be discouraging or they will not be encouraging the possibility of war. They will be saying that, oh, war should have been avoided. And idealist countries would be like criticizing it like anything, right? So, you can think of that. So, we are all aware that war has its own impact on different aspects of society. So now impact of war. So impact of war in different aspects of society, fine. And then we can say including human tragedy, so loss of life and all that. What are the those ethical issues that are crucial to be considered while launching a war? So what is this? This is related to just war theory, right? So, what are the ethical issues that should be taken in consideration before launching a war? I just discussed the points of just war theory. So, you'll be bringing in the just war theory and you'll be discussing whether the principles of just war theory were taken care of while the Russian Ukrainian war started. Okay. And then it's saying illustrate with justification the ethical issues involved in the given state of affair, right? So the approach for this given answer, if I decode it for all of you, you can reflect upon it, that first you could have given a fact associated with Russian Ukrainian war. Okay, so Russian Ukrainian war. So Russia, like let's say Russia Ukraine war, you can start with a fact, start with a fact, or you can start with a quote, quote regarding necessity of war, regarding necessity of war, right? Then in the next para, so this is like something associated with your intro. I have given you this possibility, this or this. Then you can talk about the main body of the question. So in the body, you are supposed to discuss just war theory, just war theory in terms of, like let's say, like if it depends, if it was a longer question, you could have discussed about national interest, how different countries aspire to preserve their national interest on the basis of idealism, realism, and we can consider like the possibility of like this, what is it called, liberalism. Okay, so just war theory, when we are discussing about it, you can say this dimension that Russia, so it launched war in terms of national interest and connecting it with which approach? Realism. This is what Russia will say, because it wanted that NATO should be contained, interference of US in its neighborhood should be contained. Okay, so Russia against Finally, it was against US only. It was against NATO only, that you interfere in this area and see what I can do. That's what Putin said, right? So this is associated with the concept of realism. So you can now connect, right? Then discuss just war theory principles and reflect how far the principles were regarded. Principles were regarded before, during, and after war. Okay. In light of above principles, in the light of above principles, okay, analyze, analyze, analyze whether um, Russia, Ukraine stand is ethical or not. Okay, so this is like incorporating analysis plus example, analysis plus examples, because it's saying illustrate with justification. Focus of the question is justification. Okay, so you have to analyze. When you are analyzing, you are giving justification. So the just war principles, the theory principles you are recalling, and then you are connecting. So you can recall whether what is the nature of damage. You can recall whether civilians or non-combatants were targeted or not. You can talk about the possibility associated with were all options exhausted or not. Are you recalling all of it, right? So when we are discussing about this, I hope you can see that the theory that you are learning is associated with the application based questions that you are getting in the exam. If you are thorough with the theory, you would be capable to respond to the answers. If you are not thorough with the theory, you will have a problem. So, what is advisable for all of you? You can see, like every week in Indian Express, there is a devoted section for ethics for UPSC. You can, like the online copy, so you can follow that for latest examples related to ethics. Be super thorough with the syllabus. When you are really thorough with the syllabus, you can connect that what all is going on and how to connect it with the present syllabus. Okay, that ways you can maintain balance associated with your approach. So connect, reflect. Remember, majority of the questions, like 70% to 80%, are associated with theory. When you are thorough with what I have already taught, and you can connect one chapter with the other, one subtopic with the other, you will be able to write an answer profoundly. When you know a theory, you can understand the example, you can connect the example with the theory. Being thorough with the theory makes you understand whether the example is suitable or not. Okay, and so knowing the examples are also important, knowing the theory is also important. What is being done by the lecture, as well as the soft copy material which I got it posted in the ARM section for all of you, the purpose of it is to fix the 80%, and the 20% I keep giving you as visions, visions in the form of giving you examples. Constantly I keep quoting a lot of examples, so that when you are coming across other examples also, you know how to add it to your notes, you know how to add it to your material, and you learn how to connect the chapters which you are studying with the real life which is unfolding before all of you. See, this paper is so interesting. It has topics related to psychology. Like there is attitude, aptitude, right? Foundational values, emotional intelligence. There are topics related to governance. What we are dealing is hardcore related to governance. Today in the morning batch, when I was discussing these topics, they said that, ma'am, RTI, Citizens Charter, all that has already been done in the component of governance. The governance teacher has already taught. I was like, great, bravo, that's amazing. That cuts down my job. I will just give you an overview. I'll show what all has been supported in material, and I'll straight away take those areas which have not been discussed. But at the same time, I was informed that corporate governance was not discussed in detail. So I discussed corporate governance in greater detail, though corporate governance can be asked in GS paper 2 governance. So when I am teaching, you can pick this information, pick this area of corporate governance and use it in GS paper 2 if a question is asked there. Similarly, suppose you are reading about RTI, Citizens Charter, all that concept like factual dimension over there in governance, bring all that wisdom and use it here when the segment is being associated with ethics. That's exercising wisdom, that's consolidating material, that's associated with the approach. Okay, so I hope you all are able to understand that. Okay, now with respect to this given segment, when we are further like moving ahead with this given dimension, so you can connect with corporate governance. Now, do you remember the diagram which I had created for governance? Do you remember this? Citizen was in the midst, government was in one segment, there was like private sector in another segment, and then there was like the civil society or NGOs in another segment. And while drawing this diagram, I had drawn it like this, and it was like a both way possibility that was unfolding, like with respect to the bodies that were interacting. Can you recall all this? Yeah, all of you? Okay. So when we are discussing about this given possibility, okay, we all need to connect it with like what is unfolding before all of us. So when we are connecting this given sub dimension related to corporate governance and how corporate governance is facilitating the segment. So first we can recall what is governance. And when we are talking about corporate governance, we need to understand that how corporate governance is distinct from governance. In governance, for citizen, there was government. But in corporate governance, the word is corporate. So it will get connected to private sector. And the ethos that needs to be maintained associated with private sector. So you will see this given definition, which is wholesome, which is exhaustive, that corporate governance is application of best management practices, compliance of law, in true letter and spirit, and adherence of ethical standards for effective management and distribution of wealth, discharge of social responsibility for sustainable development of all stakeholders, all keywords put together. So there are best management practices. Okay. Second, compliance of law, true to letter and spirit. Third, adherence to ethical standards. Why ethical standards? For effective management and distribution of wealth. So management and distribution of wealth. Fourth. Fifth is discharge of social responsibility. And what is social responsibility targeting? So discharge of social responsibility for what? Sustainable development of all stakeholders. These six subpoints clubbed together creates the best definition of this given sub segment, which is related to corporate governance. See, bachas, I have been trying to give my best for past like 14 days related to these concepts. I know that bit by bit, a lot of you are gaining confidence and clarity in the subject. A subject you had no clue 15 days back, a subject you have not studied in your school or college days, and bit by bit, step by step, lecture after lecture, like stepping stones with notes, with material, whatever I could do with examples, like stories, anecdotes. I tried to bring in as much clarity as possible. Now, what is really required is multiple revisions, writing, memorizing, and then answer practice. While doing answer practice, open the notes and keep the notes opened, and then try to pick out the key relevant information and write it in the answer. You'll see initially the answer still will go haywire despite seeing the keywords. Either it will be too stretched, or the manipulation of information in a abstract manner will not take place, key reflections will not dawn upon you. All this will happen. Keep trying, keep trying. Open the notes, reflect, understand, try to write it. Once you start writing, okay, and you have written, like let's say related to every subtopic, you start writing two three answers, you will suddenly realize that if you remembered all the points, you did not need to open the registers or notes or printouts of the notes I have shared. Without opening it, if it was a part of your memory, if it was a part of your thought process, you could create the answer by yourself. The day you realize that all the notes is a part of your thought process, memorizing, revising, memorizing, revising, it takes 5 to 7 revisions, okay, on an average to master any subject. So the moment you have mastered it, you don't need to open the notes, and you start reflecting and trying to write all the answers by yourself. The day that starts happening, go for test series. Okay, any test series, write tests. When you write tests, then you actually gain command over the subject. This is step by step approach to grow. with respect to this given discipline. And this could have been explained to you only when the theory would have been imbibed inside you. Now, when you're understanding the theory, these suggestions, these pieces of advice that I'm giving you will make sense, right? So, corporate governance, I hope all of you are able to reflect upon the definition and understand it thoroughly. Again, as you are understanding it thoroughly, then what is the purpose of corporate governance? So, it is to conduct the business in accordance with shareholders' desires. Shareholders' desires, whereby what will a shareholder want? It will try to maximize its wealth by conforming to the conforming nahi, conforming hona chahiye, by conforming to the basic rules of the society, the laws and local customs. Means they don't want to maximize profit by unethical means. It is by ethical means, by accepted means, by social standards. Again, corporate governance is also associated with building relations among various stakeholders, whereby the direction of the company gets determined by the nature of relations it is able to develop. Okay, so who are the stakeholders? We are using the term stakeholders multiple times. So the term stakeholders is associated with all these people. We can see shareholder, manager, board of director, employees, customers, creditors, suppliers, community. All these segments can be associated with, we can say, the word stakeholder. Okay, I hope all of you are gaining bit by bit confidence and understanding this with respect to it. Okay, so my pleasure, Anuishka. I hope like you are enjoying the notes and you are finding the notes easier. I'm glad to know that. This question is out of core topic. What will be the punishment that happened in Manipur? Oh, that was highly unethical. The very unethical move taken by the mighty community towards the two women. That's like nothing but the patriarchy put to exercise. At least in Northeast, relatively violence against women is quite low within the communities. So this is going to trigger a new kind of culture, a new hate culture. Targeting of women is something which leads to degradation of a population. It drags down the possibility of any ethical resolution of any strain or war. Okay, so that's how state as a stakeholder. Yes, you can consider the state also as a stakeholder. I'm getting 85 to 100 marks in GS paper. Is it good marks? You can improve upon it, Nitesh. Massively you can improve upon it. Okay, keep practicing, because remember, Nitesh, what you are able to do is you are able to have confidence and courage to appear for the test and see where you are standing. Now what is needed is greater sharpness, revision and expertise. That's how you grow better. Okay, now with respect to this, when we are discussing about, like, let's say, like corporate governance. So corporate governance, it has become all the more important for all of us, especially in last 30 years, post LPG reforms, economic reforms. We can see the public sector is bit by bit taking a back seat, and the private sector is taking a significant role. More work is getting outsourced and privatized, right? So basic services are now reaching out to people, like pertaining to education, telecommunication, information technology, healthcare, reaching out to people through private sector. So the role of private sector cannot be denied. We need to have a social cohesiveness and social cooperation. In the absence of social cohesiveness and social cooperation, we will not be able to make best use of the private sector. So it is very important for all of us. And what private sector is capable of when it comes to devastation and exploitation, you can recall what East India Company did to India. 150 plus years of, we can say, enslavement of a country, first as a company, later as a colony, like later as a, we can say, colonizer, right? So this is something which we need to understand, that private sector needs to be made responsible. It needs to be held responsible when it comes to using the, like, resources ethically, connecting with the larger concerns of the masses ethically. That's so very important. Okay, so we can see that in India, when we are talking about business, when we are talking about large scale businesses, corporate sector, interestingly, one third of the business of India is held by, we can say, business families or the high honkos, which are integrated via big family, big kinship relation. So in that situation, we can understand that corporate governance of India is different from the corporate governance of West. Rather than one individual creating a company and making it big, or a team of independent individuals making a company and like creating a company and making it big, in case of India it's very different. Here it is the family, it is the family which runs the company. So approach related to corporate governance has to be different. We also can see the dynamics of caste, religion, gender, all that also influences corporate governance. If you remember the case study which I had initially discussed with all of you, what was the segment that I explained to all of you? Can you remember? Can you recall? So when we speak of the case study, that there was this case whereby you had to hire, and the senior management had instructed, do not hire young women because they are in the age of pregnancy, and that will lead to maternity leave, and that will be lead to a lots of loss of finances and burdensome possibility for the country. So what would you do? Remember that. So in that situation, I said that reach out, final solution, that reach out to the HR and the board of directors, because they are going to provide the solution. Why? Because when corporate governance is put under concern, a lot of unethical practices can also creep in, which can be exclusive to India, like caste based discrimination, religious discrimination within the company. Okay, like in West there can be a problem of racial discrimination. Here in India there can be regional discrimination also. I remember way back, like my cousin, one of them, he's settled in US, in Boston. He has his own company and he's like playing it big now. But way back, I'm talking about, like, when I was in standard 10th or so, 1998 or so. So he like had moved to Mumbai. He was like, sorry, Pune, and he was working there. Later on, few years later, that was 2003 or 4, he joined Infosys, and then he started growing in Infosys. By 2006 7, he was like, he traveled to like US. He went there, he worked there, he made it big over there. Bit by bit he understood the local dynamics of different companies. Then he started his own company, resigned from Infosys. That is how he, bit by bit, he built his empire, whatever he could. Now, the insight which I want to empower you with regarding this given dimension, when he was there working in Infosys in Pune, initially he felt this problem, that there was a lot of discrimination associated with, like, Marathi and non-Marathi, and rebuking him also, because, like, he had studied from JNV, Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya. He had not studied like us cousins, all of us, from like English medium school. That's why he always said that, you people have an advantage in terms of fluency of English. Then he caught up. Now he is in US. He's like managing a company, so you can very well understand. But his initial rigors, so he had a thick accent. He could not speak properly in English, and then there was the problem of North Indian versus Marathi. So that kind of rigor that he experienced, and we are talking about what? Corporate governance, right? So he had to reach out to the HR for the solution, that this is how these people are treating, and I need some effective respite. So she intervened, and certain other interventions were further carried out. Certain policies were hyphenated in the company, that this is not permissible, or this is not done. So that was, we can say, the nascent stage of Infosys was just emerging and rising. So corporate governance in India becomes a necessity in the wake of LPG reforms. But at the same time, with respect to the continuity of different patterns of inequality which is exercised in Indian society by and large. Okay, so again, another reason for bringing in reforms and the possibility of in stakeholders, when we are talking about like stakeholders, you can see board of directors, and in board of directors, when we are discussing about it, just a second. So in board of directors, you will find this independent directors. So the very possibility of thinking about corporate governance and reforms related to it, that was something which was thought of after the case of Ramalinga Raju. Ramalinga Raju, Satyam Computers. So this Satyam fraud, or this Satyam scam was massive. This fellow Ramalinga Raju, he had just 5% share or 5% stake in the company. That's it. He was a promoter. And what he did was he spoke to the CA. God knows how he manipulated the situation. He inflated the balance sheets like anything. Profits were inflated, the balance sheets were inflated. He inflated all the, we can say, paperwork of the company, because of which, you know, the share market was like surprised. A lot of investors came, they started investing in Satyam. But Satyam was just a bubble. There was, in reality, the papers were inflated, so some or the other time the bubble had to burst. And when the bubble burst, who lost the money? The stakeholders, the shareholders. Okay, so the shareholders lost the money. And why did it happen? Because when this like Satyam scam happened, there was no independent director in the company. There was no idea of having an independent director in the company. So in 2013, it was made mandatory, okay, under the Companies Act, that every company needs to have at least one third of its members as independent, like we can say, as like board of directors, who are, we can consider, independent directors. So who are independent directors? Independent directors, they did not have investment in the company. They did not have, like, they did not create the company. In board of directors, when we are discussing about it, as I'm connecting it with this given dimension, you can see executive directors, independent directors, nominee directors. So executive director is like the real owner of the company, is the real boss, the people who have created the company. Generally, in case of India, executive directors are family members, because they have created the company. So independent directors can be retired IAS officers, retired army personnel. They are encouraged to become independent directors in the board of directors, and give their say, give their intervention regarding what ought to happen. They get hefty salaries for it, they are paid quite heavily for it. And you can see that they are able to pull through a lot of possibilities which are associated with, we can say, what unfolds for all of us in terms of corporate governance, whereby cheating is contained, because an independent director is supposed to maintain ethical conduct in the company, is supposed to see that any kind of imbalanced practice or uneven behavior is not exercised in the company. Okay, so that's the crucial role of an independent director when we are reflecting upon it. Okay, so independent directors, like, they are hired also independently. They are like, the role of executive directors in terms of hiring is minimal. It's not there. There's an independent body which is again comprising of independent directors. It is they who select the independent director for a given company. The problem is that the independent directors can be removed, okay, by a simple majority by the board of directors. And who is dominating the board of directors? It is executive directors, the family members, the company owners. So if they don't like the independent director, if they see that the independent director is too upright, not ready to compromise for us, not ready to, pave a way for us, let us get rid of this guy. That's the problem with the issue. Again, independent director, you see, they sometimes are also not so upright and ethical people, because there is, I would say, a constant sense of insecurity. An insecurity that I have to create big, I have to, survive big, I have to, like, live in a specific manner, whereby we can also connect with this given dimension. Now, what happened, like in this case, when we are talking about independent directors, so independent directors, they are provided with business class tickets in airlines, they are provided with five-star hotel stays, they are provided with chauffeur driven cars, they are provided with, a lot of tour and travel package, a good salary. So all this will be taken away the moment you are forced to resign, or the moment you are voted out of power, right? So an independent director, sometimes for their private gain, for sometimes for the sake of surviving in the job, they are open to compromise. Okay, they are open to compromise with sometimes the unethical conducts of the executive directors, who are deciding things for the company which may not always be in the larger interest of the shareholder. Okay, so when we are talking about these given possibilities with respect to who are the stakeholders, okay, What is the post of a special director? Special director, I'm discussing three types of directors with respect to executive, independent, and nominee directors. Okay, few of you might get curious about who is a nominee director. So nominee directors are like, they are also like independent director but slightly different. Like, let's say a bank is there, okay, or any investor is there. So like, let's say in this case, let me give the example of a bank. So suppose a company has received hefty funds from the bank, has got a lot of funds from the bank, like 200 cr. The bank estimated the net worth of the company and pumped that money, that take 200 cr and do what you want to do, create what you want to create. So like, let us say in that situation, when the like we can see that the bank manager, when he is like thinking about that given possibility, when he is like reflecting upon that given like we can say idea, in that given situation, like the bank manager can appoint a nominee director for that company, so that the fund that has been transferred, how the fund is being utilized, what are the decisions associated with the funds by the company, or how the company is taking the course of action with respect to its development, which will actually result in development. All that is analyzed, reported by the nominee director. Okay, so nominee director, you can connect it with the banks. All right, I hope you can understand that. So I will be like giving again an insight associated with this given subsegment which we have just started. So shareholders, sorry, stakeholders of a company, when we are discussing about corporate governance, I like discussed that it is all associated with building relationships amongst various stakeholders. So who are the various stakeholders? We are yet to understand, elaborate and discuss, but let us do so after the break. So it is 7. Let us take a 15 minutes break. Okay, so and be back. The dividends, people we can say who are aspiring for or seeking accountability, transparency, right? And if this is not maintained, okay, then in the absence of, we can say, their interests being preserved, in the absence of interest being preserved, what happens? That leads to various types of scams. So we all are aware of, we can consider the different types of scams that have existed, like Sharda scam, Satyam scam, we can say Sahara scam, right? Like ek se ek badkar huge. They have been like quite huge if we are speaking of it, right? So we can think of these scams whereby the interest of the shareholder is not maintained, right? Similarly, you can see this term customer. Who are customers? So customers are another list of stakeholders who are like aspiring for quality, value for money when they are coming for the service or the good. So quality, value for money, they can be associated with, we can say, black marketing. We can connect them with hoarding, and they are victims victims of it, right? Nowadays we saw that related to tomatoes, earlier it was onions. So every time there is a new vegetable that they experiment with. Anyway, so customers, when we are talking about them, we can see that with customers also we need to maintain fair trade. So we need to maintain fair trade. We need to maintain transparency. In the absence of it, we all can see that how this problem emerges. So a company like Maggie, Nestle Maggie, will put lead in the food, and it will keep shrinking the size of the Maggie. Every few months we will see that the weight will keep reducing. So all these unethical practices that they keep doing, 2 minutes Maggie, like, get rid of your hunger. What, get rid of your hunger with that teeny tiny packet? You have to eat 2 packets in a go at least. I mean, two is too much, but at least 1.5 packet, because the original size of the packet is gone, right? So yeah, shrinkflation is what we are suffering from when we are speaking of it. So customers, we need to look into the concerns of the customers as well. Similarly, when we are talking about this community, this is associated with the larger society, and we can say that the concept of CSR, the concept of CSR, corporate social responsibility, is actually emerging from serving the society and the community, right? We can again associate it with, we can say, managers. When we are speaking of managers again, whether the manager is democratic, or we can consider versus the manager is authoritative towards the employees, means what is the managerial style when we are speaking of this, because the managerial style is going to determine the nature of, we can say, governance happening inside the company, and that influencing the personality of the employees, the work culture of the, like, we can say, office. So all of it we can connect about the possibility of these people. So when we are talking about stakeholders, you can understand who the stakeholders are. Board of directors, just few minutes back I was discussing about the executive director, if you all can recall, that I like shared about the executive director. We discussed about the independent director, and we also discussed about nominee director. Okay, so with private sector, these directors are there. Don't mix them with the directors who are heading the departments in government sector. We have assistant directors, we have, like, deputy directors, we have directors who are IAS officers, first starting with trainees, and then moving ahead, we can see that the IAS officers who grow in seniority. So from assistant directors they become directors, so you can just think of them, or special directors. Don't mix that director with this director, because we are discussing corporate governance, not governance in public sector. It is private sector. Okay, so let us stick to the directors associated with the private sector, right? So the constituents of, like, when we are talking about corporate governance, so first and foremost, the constituents, when we are discussing about it, we can see these are the stakeholders, and then we can reflect upon the 4 pillars of corporate governance. I have just given the given dimension associated with this 4 pillars of corporate governance. So first and foremost, we can think of accountability, then fairness, then transparency, then independence. So with respect to this one, accountability, we all can see that accountability is associated with what? Ensuring that management is accountable to the board. So management accountable to the board, and ensuring that board is accountable to the shareholder. So board accountable to the shareholder, both ways. Both ways the system needs to be accountable, then only transparency can be established per se. Fairness, when we speak of fairness, what is fairness? So this can be associated with protecting the shareholders rights by treating all shareholders equally, irrespective of whether they are minority shareholders or they are holding majority of the shares. All should be treated equally. Providing effective redressal to the violations, if any has been done, when we are speaking of it, right? So with respect to this given dimension, we all can reflect upon the term. Then we have transparency. So for transparency, what can we consider? Ensuring timely, accurate disclosure of all materials. So timely, accurate disclosure of all material matters. And in this, we can see it can be associated with the financial situation, performance, ownership, corporate governance. All these segments can be associated with the term, we can say, transparency. Independence. Okay, again, with respect to this transparency and independence, we can reflect, or we can connect it with, like, procedures and structures. Okay, so with respect to this, we can connect procedures and structures that are like in place so as to minimize or avoid conflict of interest. Okay, so when we are thinking of this given dimension, procedures and structures that are in place so that we are minimizing the conflict of interest. That's how we can bring in transparency. That's how we can establish clarity in what's happening, how is it happening, how it ought to happen. Again, independent directors and advisors, they need to be like strengthened. So they should be free from any form of influence that people try to create by giving them extra perks, emoluments, or some kind of mental coercion. Otherwise, they will be forced to resign. So all that can be removed so that there is greater transparency exercised in the system. Right. Now, with respect to this given understanding, when we are starting with this constituents of corporate governance, and just before the break, I explained who is the board of director in terms of executive director, independent directors, and nominee directors. I hope all of you understood that, right? Who are executive directors, independent directors, nominee directors, right? All of you can recall that? Yeah. So the most important one is independent director. According to me, the questions that you can receive in the future can be associated with independent directors because their role is quite crucial. It is associated with barely a decade old, we can say, legal intervention due to which this post is created in a mandatory pace. It is no more a choice. You have to create an independent director. See, earlier what used to happen is that like the executive directors, they used to manipulate the situation. So when they had to make a director, so executive directors, they are the insider directors, so they used to see that who is like fit for this position. So if their domestic help, their staff, their driver, anyone, or their children were like, let us say, had completed graduation or something, because they will always be like under the feet, they will always be pinned down, they can always be contained. So they were made to sign the papers and become independent directors, but their role was like, of course, negligent, and they were not qualified enough to make a meaningful intervention in the functioning of the company, if we speak of it. So we could see that these executive directors who were heading different departments for profiteering, for hijacking the share of the company, they used to manipulate these so-called independent directors. Then, what happened was that the government came up with a list of instructions related to who can possibly be an independent director. So not a family member, if possible a woman. Okay, especially if you reflect upon Uday Kotak committee 2017 suggestions and how it got executed in India, you will be seeing that there are specific dimensions associated with independent directors. So they have to be people outside the company, not associated with the company or by any blood relation, any kind of relative. They should not be related. And these individuals, they should be like, we can consider they are not holding any shares in the company. Okay, so they are neither relative nor any of any executive director, nor holding any share. So like, you can understand the role, the important role of the independent directors. Like, let us consider, this is like this person. Okay, and this person, like, let's consider, is there. So this person has opened a company X, and X company over the years makes a lot of profit. Okay, so it makes a lot of profit. Okay, so profit is too high, and the person is able to save a lot and thinks of opening another company, like, let's say, in this case, Y. So Y company opened. Now as it is opening it, it tries to get it listed in the IPO, means shares listed. So suppose the person tries to sell the we can share to the common shareholders, invite the investors coming from the market. Okay, all right. So all right, nominee director is not clear. Simple language. I said, I gave you the example. For example, the bank is funding or sponsoring. So I said that in that situation, the bank can appoint a nominee director. And what is the purpose? So this fellow is supposed to keep a watch over the investments and decisions of the company. All right. I hope that's clear now. Ambesh. Okay. Now, with respect to this, when we are discussing about it, we can think of like the Y company, it gets opened. Okay. In this case, you can just imagine like some very credible face, like suppose Ratan Tata or suppose like Narayan Murthy. So these people are like they enjoy very high level of credibility. So suppose after owning one company, like let's say they think of owning another company, they open another company, so they enjoy high level of credibility in the market, high level of respect in the market. So the moment they think of opening a company, everyone will be like, yes, 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 we are going to invest in it. It's a good company. This fellow is credible, and this is going to be a beneficial intervention associated with what like investment is made in the company. Now, how probable the problem emerges, you can just see. So suppose this X company, okay, with respect to X and Y company when we are discussing, so suppose X and Y company, they enter into a silent contract and they do not inform the shareholders towards the beginning, that there is a silent contract, that every time X company is giving a financial advice or any formal advice, then for the advisory purpose Y will be paying to X. Now suppose Y also catches up and Y also starts making a lot of profit. Suppose Y makes a profit of like let's say 100 cr. Now, in this situation, it's a huge amount. Now, this individual doesn't want to share the 100 CR with the shareholders. So, what the person shows is like, suppose, shows that 30 CR is given for, like, let's say, advisory role. Okay, advisory purpose. Okay, and after that, the person is showing some other expenses, some 30 CR or so, and 40 CR the person is distributing between the shareholders. Now, technically, the shareholders deserved something like distribution of 100 CR. Okay, or maybe after the few investments, the investment is also suppose inflated. So, after making some other kind of expenses, still, like let's say 70 CR is left, but that has been manipulated. So, rather than disclosing the 70 CR, what is disclosed in this given situation, as all of us can see, that the amount that is disclosed is like let's say 40 CR or 30 CR, less amount. In that situation, who is suffering? The shareholder. Who will keep a check over this situation? That such a like we can say unethical practice does not creep in corporate governance. That's the role of independent director. So the independent director will not let such kind of contracts, secretive contracts, take place without informing the shareholders, the larger shareholders. The minority shareholders of the company cannot ambiguously decide something without keeping the public in faith, because public money is involved. If it would have been the money of the company, the situation would have been different. But if public money and investment is involved, the people should have been informed about such a deal taking place, or such a, like we can say, contract taking place when we are discussing about it. Okay, so we can see that the Satyam scandal I was talking, it happened only because of this reason, that independent directors were not there. If they would have been there, probably Ramalinga Raju would not have been able to inflate, okay, inflate the spreadsheets, the balance sheets, and would not have been able to create this nuisance. You can think of the same with respect to Vijay Mallya. Vijay Mallya, with respect to his United Beverages, with respect to Kingfisher Airlines, like a lot of money laundering took place. A lot of money was siphoned here and there, showing something else in the balance sheet, doing something else. So all that was like done. So you can think of that fellow as well. So now, as I was sharing, that this independent director, the way he is appointed, it is on the basis of recommendations, recommendations of a nomination committee, and the nomination committee itself is like constituted of majority of independent directors. So this nomination committee is the one which recommends like an independent director for a specific company. So in terms of appointment, it is very fair appointment. When we are talking about it, it's very fair by the nomination committee. Nomination committee. And the nomination committee itself is comprising of majority of, we can say, independent directors. So that's not a problem. The actual problem emerges elsewise. We can see that when we are speaking of this given scenario, the problem actually emerges when we all can see that the, like, the removal is associated with it. So with respect to removal, as I shared with all of you, that a simple majority can remove the, like, independent director. The executive directors have more power in that situation because they are the ones who are in majority present in the company, right? So that is how they control, they have a tendency to control the independent director and the role of him or her. Okay, so they expect, the board of director expects that there will be a yes man that they are getting. If the person is not a yes man, then, like, let us get this person removed. That's why we need to understand that independent directors, they also seek to have good relations with the other board of directors. Okay, so because that is how they are associated with many companies, they are making good money even after retirement, they are able to survive. So that's how you can see this given dimension when we are speaking of this given segment. Now I can give you, with respect to this removal issue which I'm sharing, I can give you an example of Nusli Wadia. Are you aware of who Nusli Wadia is? Are you aware of Nes Wadia? If not Nusli Wadia, are you aware of Nes Wadia? No? Okay. See, this is the gap of generations. Few of you are aware of him. Good, 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 great. So Nes, I know, as if he's like Vaibhav's friend. Okay. So Nes Wadia is the guy who, if you all can recall, associated with Preeti Zinta. He was earlier Preeti Zinta's boyfriend. Before, like later, like, they broke off and she moved on with another guy from US. She got married to him. So prior to that, Nes Wadia was the boyfriend. Very cute looking, very handsome. In our times, women like who used to like Preeti Zinta, that oh, she's a nice actress, used to have a crush on Nes Wadia also. That wow, this guy is really good looking. So anyway, so this guy Nes Wadia's father is Nusli Wadia. Quite influential family, like rich for more than, like, with respect to many generations when we are speaking of it. So when we are talking about Nusli Wadia, when he was an independent director in Tata, so what happened that Ratan Tata, he had actually a dream, as you know, that he is a very benevolent man, always thinking about the common man, always thinking about bringing simpler interventions which eases the life of the common man. You remember after the Taj attack, the kind of facilitation he brought for the victims of Taj, and for the family members of the people who, like, lost their lives during the 26/11 attack. So this man is a through and through gentleman, always like tries to bring in greater context in terms of existence, and of, we can say, a very simple lifestyle that he follows, like living in a small flat, not something very pompous, driving a basic car, choosing to fly if by economy class, not business class. Imagine such a rich person, and like exercising all this. So he is always concerned about the middle class. So a few years back, he thought that let every, like, person who's belonging to middle class but cannot afford a car own a car, and let me facilitate it, because so much of iron and steel and scrap is there. So, like, at least for making body we can support, and it's just the engine that we need to fix. So calculating the cost, the bare minimum cost that he could think was 1 lakh rupees. So let a lower middle class or a rising middle class person also fulfill the dream of owning a car. So what he did was that he proposed the nano project, and he got it ratified, and he, like, started investing. And nano project was a massive loss for Tatas. When Tatas started making loss, the shareholders also started losing money, to which the president, because later on, like, Ratan Tata had retired, so that, like, the chairman of the company that was what was his name? Cyrus Mistry. So Cyrus Mistry was the guy who became the new chairman. And like Cyrus Mistry decided that let's do away with nano project. It is like unnecessary and it is burdensome. So Cyrus Mistry proposed the idea of doing away with the nano project. Now you need a majority, and in that the role of independent director becomes quite crucial. So what happened was that Nusli Wadia also supported Cyrus Mistry looking into the concerns of shareholders. Now here comes the role of who? The role of independent director preserving the rights of shareholders. So Nusli Wadia, when he realized that, yeah, true, because of this nano project, it is the poor shareholder who's losing money. A middle class person purchasing or investing in shares of Tatas, okay, is a person who is actually, we can consider that this person is a person who is actually trying to make good money. The person is trying to make, some easy money through the share market. The person is not investing in Tatas to lose money, like a devaluation of their shares. That's what not the person is aspiring for. So seeking, and after all, it's not a rich person investing in small shares. So the concern of the shareholder is also the concern of middle class, not just the concern of nano owner. So like Nusli Wadia reflected upon it, and he supported Cyrus Mistry that yes, we should do away with the this nano project. Now Ratan Tata came to know about it. So when he came to know about it, he applied pressure on the other executive directors to remove Nusli Wadia, and unethically he was removed, okay, by that simple majority. He was removed from his position, and that became the talk of the nation. Everyone started talking that how unethical it was to remove Nusli Wadia from his position when he was behaving in ethical lines, when he was taking care of the interest of the shareholders. Okay, so that's the role of independent director. An independent director can intervene, block, make it popular, bring in transparency by making this given information that how the rights of stakeholders or shareholders is at stake. Okay, and the people can become empowered. That is the accountable behavior exercised by an independent director, and that was something which was getting compromised in this case. Okay, so the moment we are speaking of this, that what is the purpose of working efficiently. Oh, okay. Varman, do you understand something like salary? A good hefty package salary? And do you understand getting a car and getting hotels? Do you get all the different types of perks when we are discussing about it? So when you are asking that, ma'am, as independent director, do not hold any share in the company, then what is the purpose of working efficiently? The purpose of working efficiently is the purpose of the job. I mean, will you be an efficient IS officer only when you get an opportunity to go corrupt? And did we not discuss it when we were discussing about civil services values and talking about integrity, transparency, accountability? And what kind of question is that, Verman? So should a person be motivated to work only when the person is having some opportunity to earn something extra? The person is getting a good salary, is getting a good pay package, and why is the person getting that? What is the purpose? The purpose is associated with the responsibility the person is ready to take for the job, right? So I hope you can understand that. Varman, is it clear? Though SME sir has also supported you with an answer, and that's a very formal answer which you can see. They are appointed to provide unbiased and objective guidance to the company. Their primary purpose is to represent the interest of the stakeholders and ensure proper governance, offer strategic insights. Such amazing answer he has given, but I got the essence of your question, the soul of your question. So I'm just giving you the right answer associated with what actually you were asking. Anyway, so with respect to this, when we further move ahead, we can see there is regulatory mechanism. When we are discussing about regulatory mechanism pertaining to this given situation, so we need to understand that regulatory mechanism with respect to corporate governance. So with respect to corporate governance, when we are discussing about regulatory mechanism, we all can connect it with, we can say, the different types of laws, okay, different laws which are created for bringing greater regulation. Like for example, we can think of, as I was discussing, Companies Act 2013. You can think of environmental laws, right? Environmental laws. You can think of labor law, factory law, okay, Banking Regulation Act, all of it. Now, so when we are speaking of all these, yes, you can talk of contract laws. You can also think of SEBI. Yes, Anjali, good. So, but act, when we are talking about it, act means law. When we are talking about regulators, regulatory agencies, regulatory bodies, okay, the role of these so called regulatory agencies and bodies. Yes, Minimum Wages Act can also be connected with this given subsegment. So, when we are speaking of this given subdimension associated with, I would say, regulatory agencies and bodies, we all can reflect upon the given segment associated with SEBI, RBI, IRDA, CCI, TRI, right? Provident Fund Regulation Agency, Provident Fund Regulation Agency, PFRA, okay. We can think of all these given bodies, so they are the bodies who are associated with, like, bringing in, we can say, greater transparency and fighting against corruption. So but what happens is, rather than fighting against corruption, sometimes they end up fighting against each other. Like for example, in Sharda scam, it was RBI and SEBI that fought, that whose responsibility it is to investigate and to handle the situation, and because of which the, like, the scammer slipped like an eel. We could not catch, just because they kept, like, throwing the responsibility on each other. Similarly, we can see that in ULIP scam also, when the insurance money was invested in the capital market, which ought not to be done, because capital market is risk taking market. In that, when that money was put in that situation, we all could see that SEBI or IRDA, they both, like, were fighting over the thing, who is supposed to take the responsibility. So in that situation, there was a bone of contention between the two. So regulatory mechanism, if the regulatory bodies, regulators, these agencies are responsible, they also bring in greater transparency and regulation in the corporate, like, we can say, governance, okay. Then we can also talk about third party insurance providers, like Crisil, like Sibyl, right? You must have heard these bodies name. So Crisil, Sibyl, so they actually give ranking, and their ranking or rating agencies, you can consider them as that. So their ranking or rating also improves the credit score of a company, because of which you can see that they can get investors actively, okay. So that's what we can consider. You can also think of this body SMERA, associated with rating agency for movies, right? So they give assurance. And what happens with their assurance? If their assurance, like, let us say, is positive assurance, then what will happen? Investment will go up, okay. Share prices will go up. And if, like, they give a negative feedback, then both of these situations will start becoming negative, okay. So you need to be very clear that the third party assurance providers are also, like, creating a kind of, we can say, credit score, improving the credit score for a corporate company, a corporate governance. Now we can see corporate governance in India, okay, when we are talking about it. So remember, regulatory mechanism, one क्यों लिख दिया, 1 2 3, okay. So these are the three we can consider. These are the like, three ways in which companies are regulated in India. Now corporate governance in India, it is done through two methods. What are the two methods when we speak of it? So one is the static method, and in this static method, you can think of the role, as I was just sharing with all of you. So the role associated with the government, so the government passing various laws, passing various laws, and through laws it tries to control, right? So we can think of Companies Act, 2013. We can think of Banking Regulation Act. We can also think of labor law. We can think of factories law, right? Whereas we can also see there is dynamic method, dynamic as the word suggests. So dynamic method of control. This is static method of control by existing laws. When you create laws and they just stay. So dynamic method of control will get connected to SEBI. This is the game. SEBI. So the moment I say SEBI and other regulatory bodies, see SEBI is the most important, okay? Other regulatory bodies, and it is SEBI which can invite a question, if ever, related to corporate governance and regulatory mechanism. Amongst all the other bodies, SEBI has been the one which has always been on and off in news. So pay attention to that. More importantly, SEBI is important because you understand that it is the agency which is controlling capital market, and the dynamism of capital market is so tremendous. So when we are talking about, like, let's say equity market related to share, or when we are talking about like the stock exchange, or when we are talking about the debt market, the bonds, all of it can be associated with the activities of SEBI when we are speaking of it, right? So we all can, hey, ISRO, how come ISRO is coming in between, Vivek, when we are talking about corporate governance? Huh? Private companies? What is ISRO doing with private companies? Let me know. So uh, international rating bodies like Fitch and Muddy, yes. So now, so with respect to when we are talking about SEBI, we can see that like SEBI has a very crucial role, especially we can say the clause, very repetitively this can be quoted. So clause 49, okay, clause 49 is associated with, इतना गंदा लिखा है ना, खुद ही देख के गुस्सा आ रहा है, okay. So you can just see this clause 49, okay. So with respect to, like, we can consider when we are discussing about the clause 49, it is associated with the possibility of agreements which are provided by SEBI, that has to be followed by a company when it is getting listed, okay. When it is getting listed in the capital market, there are specific regulations that is to be followed, and that is something which you can speak of over here. So clause 49 of equity listing agreement, and we can see that it tries to come up with various types of solutions to regulate the given companies. You can also think of the Companies Act provision, 2013 provision, and the changes that it has brought in corporate social responsibility. The structure of corporate social responsibility underwent a massive overhaul with the Companies Act 2013 provisions. You can see this. I've provided the notes already over here in the material. So companies, corporate governance provisions in Companies Act, all the facts have been enlisted over here. So like National Financial Reporting Authority, audit and auditors with respect to them. Then you can see directors with respect to them. All the segments which I was speaking of, like 1/3 independent director, 2/3 proportional. So you just read, give a reading, you'll be able to understand this, right? Again, audit committee. So this is associated with what? 2013, we can say amendments which were brought about with respect to Companies Act, and which is incorporating the provisions for corporate governance. And 2013 is the year when, remember, the term corporate governance was incorporated in your new syllabus of UPSC. That's why you can see there is a mains question also dedicated to corporate governance immediately as the new syllabus introduces the term corporate governance. In 2013, they also incorporated in the UPSC, this CSAT paper, a passage related to corporate governance. So it has been a hot cake on and off related to the, like, civil services, we can say questions. So again, related party transaction, class action, you can see all this. So read that. Again, with respect to SEBI, I have consolidated a lot of facts, collected the facts, and kept it in one go. So, SEBI, when it was created, what kind of nature of the body is there? So, like, with respect to this different initiatives when we are speaking of it. Okay. So, like, what is the organizational structure of SEBI? So, factual aspects basically. Like, with peace of mind, when you are actually reading it, you get to know the facts. In examination, according to me, facts will not be asked, but facts needs to be understood to understand points of analysis. So what are the points of analysis? I've given that also. So brief introduction to what is the role of SEBI, who are the three main participants. Okay. And after this given subsegment, I have provided you functions of SEBI. Now, when I said that critical analysis is something that can be asked, this, so you should know the functions of SEBI. What does it perform? Because if critical analysis is asked, that whether like the regulatory bodies have been successful to ensure corporate governance or good corporate governance in India, in that situation you'll have to recall the function and whether the functions have been duly fulfilled or not. If the functions have been fulfilled, that means SEBI has been somewhere successful in performing its, we can say, functions or roles, right? And if it is not like functioning properly, that means the somewhere the goals or the roles have yet not been fulfilled sufficiently. So the we can connect it with three primary functions like protection function, regulatory function, development function. I've given the details associated with the same when we are speaking of it. Okay. So just run through this factual piece of information that I have shared with all of you, and then this current affairs material, that the new guidelines that came, just awareness. Again, according to me, this is not something which will invite question. It is how you connect current affairs with what is the theory. So SEBI, roles is more important, which I told you. So roles, the three types of roles, memorize it, have a brief understanding of it, so that in future, if there is anything related to SEBI, you are posted about it. Got it, all of you? Yeah. Now, so when we are talking about corporate, we can say, when we are speaking of corporate governance, we can not shy away from connecting it with corporate social responsibility. Now, what is corporate social responsibility? Okay, so with respect to corporate social responsibility, we all can see. So, Ruhan, I hope your full form of SEBI, history of SEBI, anything which you are curious, you can find everything is put in one place, right? So you just need to enjoy the process. You'll find anything and everything which is pertaining to basic query shall be handled. Now, so corporate social responsibility, when we are discussing about it, first and foremost, you need to understand the basic diagram. The basic diagram, what was it? So remember, citizen, in between, one side private sector, another side there was government, another side there was civil society. So corporate social responsibility is actually reaching out to the citizen by the private sector also, and the government is also aiding and assisting the private sector to reach out to the citizen. Okay, like maybe I'm just telling you, and I don't know how many of you will be like engaging or understanding. So like, let's say, this is the private sector, like let us say this is the government sector, and this is like, let's say, the NGO, self-help groups, or civil society. Now, in corporate social responsibility, what is happening? The government and the private sector are interacting, and the government is encouraging the private sector to engage with the citizen, the goodness of the citizen, whereby the government is also engaging with the goodness of the citizen. Like, suppose government starts a scheme, a welfare policy, like let us say different interventions meant for upliftment of the weaker sections or poorer sections, right? So like, let's say there is policy related to education, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, or sanitation, policy associated with, like, let's say, medicines, any such intervention. Now the government feels that let me make the private sector also responsible towards the people. Let me make the private sector also get connected to the issues of the people. Okay, in that situation, like let us say the government gets into this given practice, that it encourages, let us consider for a while, that the government encourages the private sector to take up initiatives which furthers the latest schemes, interventions and policies. Those schemes can be related to environmental concern, social concern, concerns pertaining to poverty, hunger, education, sanitation, anything. Okay, so the government encourages the corporate sector to invest 2% of its annual profit, okay, other than paying taxes, 2% of its annual profit for any social cause, to get connected with a social cause empathetically, compassionately, to work for the people directly. Okay, so any cause that the corporate body is feeling is important, it can invest. Now fun fact is, you know what, if a company is like not fulfilling the corporate social responsibility, it has not suppose paid, okay, the 2% amount for the upliftment of the poorer sections, then what can the government do, what can the bureaucrats do? So you will be like seeing this given possibility that they can also skip out rather than any legal action taken against them. They can slip out by like by the end of the third year, they can put that money in the political funds of any given political party. So by donating that amount, they can skip the problem, any kind of legal action taken against them. Suppose a company did not get time, it was so busy with its own affairs, it did not take up any cause or concern pertaining to upliftment or strengthening the issue of, like, let's say some cause pertaining to the people. Okay, so suppose it fails to take up any such cause, in this given situation we all can see that the government can take up this initiative with the company, that okay fine, you pay some amount related to the political funds and the company is free to walk. When for the first time I like heard and read about it, I was like, wow, that's what I felt. Anyway, I think you also must have felt that experience of wow. So that's also there. Anyway, with respect to this, we can also see that the corporate social responsibility, when we are talking about it, it is something which is going to improve a company's rating, its reputation. It is going to bring in greater accountability in the behavior of the company, right? So when we are speaking of this, which company, ma'am? Any company, Vivek, any private company. Okay, so we all can like see that Reliance Foundation scholarship. Yes, okay. Like Mansi. So we can also connect this given dimension with respect to this basic like definition I have given. So concept that suggests that responsibility of the corporations operating within the society to contribute towards economic, social and environmental development that creates a positive impact, okay, on the society at large. The inclusion of CSR is an attempt of the government to engage the businesses with the national development agenda, so that it's like not that they are paying taxes and they are free. They should also have an empathetic connect what is going on. Like we can see when Swachh Bharat Abhiyan was going on, so TCS, it under corporate social responsibility, it committed to build 30,000 toilets in different parts of northern and northwestern India, where women were like moving quite frequently. Again, we could see Larsen and Toubro also had claimed to construct something around 10,000 toilets. Simultaneously, there was this initiative that was taken up by Unilever. Unilever said that we will spread awareness related to sanitation and we'll spend on the campaigns associated with sanitation. So, a lot of interventions were taken up by these given bodies so that they are able to spread the sense of responsibility. Okay, when we are speaking of corporate social responsibility. Okay, so the responsibility of CSR committee is what? To formulate and regulate a board and a corporate social responsibility policy that indicates activities that the company would be taking, which is specified in Schedule 7. It is also associated with recommending the amount that should be associated with such development or welfare activities. It is also associated with monitoring the CSR policy of the company from time to time when we are talking of CSR CSR committee. So the activities they undertake, as I was telling you, hunger, poverty, education, gender equality, empowering women, child mortality, environment sustainability, vocational skills and training. These are some popular popular area with respect to like corporate social responsibility which the companies undertake in general. Okay, so I have given you a general reflection that in present times when corporate sector is earning, so see, it's not about the money per se for the government. The government is like flush with funds. It's not the money, it is the commitment that it wants to bring. It is the like, because you know, when you're committed to the people, empathetically connected, compassionately connected, you think twice before going unethical in other walks of life, in other services and goods you are providing to the people, because you are able to see like the nature and intensity of destitution, helplessness that is prevailing in a given system, right? So that's how you can connect with. Again, you can see in doing so, they are bringing unprecedented onslaught on climate, environment, sustainability, and living conditions of human beings. And in this background, what do we see? We see that this given segment, that is a question asked in 2022, that corporate sector's contribution in generating wealth and employment is increasing, means it has worked towards the issue of poverty and skill development, right? In other words, because only when you are contributing to removal of poverty or poverty alleviation, and when you are enhancing the skills of the people, that employment will be generated and wealth will be generated. So in doing so, they bring unprecedented onslaught, means a lot of damage is caused by corporate social responsibility towards the climate, towards environmental sustainability, okay, towards the living conditions of human beings when we speak of it. So it's written that in this background, do you like consider that corporate social responsibility is efficient and sufficient enough to fulfill the social roles and responsibilities needed in the corporate work mandated? Critically examine. You can see that. So you have to discuss about the nature of work that they have done. Okay. So nature of contribution, especially you have to be, because it's critically examined. So nature of contribution, you can start with that, pertaining to, we can say, poverty alleviation, and pertaining to, we can say, skill development and employment generation. So skill development, employment generation. After discussing this, this is the overview, the introduction. After this, you should like, because in this background, this is the background, so we kept this background in the introduction itself, okay. And then after this, you have to discuss that how poverty alleviation and skill development can lead to, how it can lead to, we can say, challenges related to climate change, challenges associated with environment. So when you are building a factory, or when you are like, you know, encouraging any kind of developmental activity which is not taking care of environment per se, okay, so you can bring all that. So sustainment nahi, why sustainability, so sustainability, and also it can impact the living conditions of the poor. So living conditions of the poor people. Okay, so in this can happen. Now critically examine. So critically examine means discuss the challenges and also the contributions. What contributions have been done, contributions or positive impacts. First discuss the positive impacts that have been created despite the positive like positive impact. Despite this, what happens, what are the challenges that are emerging, discuss the challenges. And after discussing the challenges, then you have to discuss, because it's critically examined. So after like discussing what are the strengths, what are the challenges that emerge, then you give the solutions. So tentative list of solutions, okay. And that's how you can substantiate, or that's how you can like talk about this given possibility. All right. So I hope all of you can understand. Can be linked with Dharavi issue. Yes, you can connect it with Dharavi also. Very good, Femina. Okay. So then we reflect upon transparency. एक मिनट इससे पहले थोड़ा सा एक और दो चीज बता देती हूँ, ठीक है. So या पहले रुको यही दिखा देती हूँ. With respect to this transparency, RTI, I know that your teacher has taught, the teacher who has taught you governance, the person has taught you this component of RTI. Okay. So what I actually want to bring in to your concern is what all segments have been covered in the notes. Just pay attention to that so that you gain some confidence that whatever has been taught by the teacher there, it is also connected here and the points have been shared here. So RTI, the need for information, this can act as a very profound introduction. So for writing profound introductions to answer, memorize this key points associated with it, that why we need information. This is something which can also act as a profound introduction for essays where there is right to freedom, right to speech. Okay, so right to speech, right to information, anything as such, this core reflection can be used in the answer. Then objectives of RTI, as you can see. So with respect to objectives of RTI, you can see that what are the given subsegments: right to of citizen, meaning of public authority, then exclusions from RTI, what is not incorporated in RTI, like bodies and agencies like IB, DRI, NCB, BSF, CRPF. Okay, again, information related to security, public safety, correspondence, it is excluded. Again, third party information you cannot extract related to commercial confidence like intellectual property rights. Okay, like which is associated with developing the uniqueness of the product and which can impact the competition of a company. So that is not disclosed. Again, exceptional situations also pertaining to larger public health. Okay, in that situation also you cannot disclose or get that information through RTI. And also private information about an individual which has nothing to do with larger public interest or national interest, then that kind of private information about an individual's life cannot be extracted. So that is there. Okay. Then the procedure of seeking information, this is something which is not important. It is until and unless you have to file. In case study also, if RTI has to be filed in the case study, then also the procedure won't be asked. You should be just generally aware of it. Okay, as a future civil servant, you should be aware that how people go about with the procedure. Because always ask what is the purpose of learning something, why should I learn, how is it going to impact my psyche, my thought process. All right, so that's why just be aware of the procedure of seeking information. Then after the procedure, I have discussed assessment of advantage of RTI and limitations of RTI. This is very important for all of you. This is something which, like, can help you in writing good answer, like with respect to, we can say, strengths of RTI and weaknesses of RTI. And RTI, as all of you know, it lost its teeth because of the amendment that we did in RTI. When RTI started, it was the most fierce thing, like leaders were scared, politicians were scared, bureaucrats were scared. But what happened, we came up with an intervention, a legal intervention, which I have, like, discussed over here, which all of you can see this, the recent amendment to RTI, whereby the parliament has passed right to information bill 2019. And because of this, what happened, now the union government, that's how it has broken the back, or, like, taken away the teeth of RTI. So the union government has the power to fix the tenure, salary, terms and conditions of service of the information commissioners, and we can see the chief information commissioner and state information commissioners. Now, the moment you are acting against the union government or any leader of union government, in that case, the government, any union government, can have the malicious intent that, oh, this RTI officer is acting too smart, so let me get this person kicked out of the job, because the tenure is getting fixed by the union government. The salary is getting fixed by the union government. So it has the power to remove the officer or appoint another officer. That's the problematic thing. That is something which will take away the independence of an RTI officer to enact, like, fiercefully, with integrity, with accountability, with uprightness and utmost honesty. That's the problematic thing that I was talking about. Another segment with respect to this RTI I was discussing was optimization of RTI Act, how to bring it to greatest use. You must have heard of Official Secrets Act, as informed by the morning batch that it has been discussed. So how Official Secrets Act versus RTI, the debate is there. Okay, so under OSA we try to hide under national security, national interest, and under RTI we have to disclose. So how they are like in contention with each other, and what is the opinion of second ARC related to of this Official Secrets Act, and what kind of intervention ought to be like taken care of when we are discussing about it. Okay, so you can reflect upon this. Again, is OSA an obstacle for RTI? I have given this also. So some critical points have also been discussed briefly and has been incorporated in your material. One quick reading and you will be able to understand that. Okay, so you can see this material. Similarly, main amendments of the provision, you can see this given subsegment, like what has been. So I've already discussed this, so I underlined all these points. It's just given in mild, we can say, expansion, and then justification that the government has given why it did so. So that also needs to be just be aware of it. Counter view is important, that how RTI is going to lose its teeth, so why it is like killing the RTI Act itself. So you can just see this notification of the RTI rules that have been like published, and impact of the RTI amendment. Okay, so this impact is important. Impact is important. It's like consolidation and reflection of the above points only, but this impact is important for all of you. Then I have also given you insight related to right to information to be forgotten, ma'am, versus okay, all right. So that's something which you consider it this way, as we have the right to information which ensures transparency and accountability in the government activities, even though their information are protected under Official Secrets Act. This pose a great threat to transparency and account. Yes, yes, yes. I filled an RTI to Cabinet Secretary. They yesterday informed that they have to dispose of my question under OSA. Okay, Kaushik. All right. Now, so with respect to this image of Citizens Charter, which I have created, this is like picked from the Primary Health Center of Meghalaya. So, Citizens Charter, as you can see, it is supposed to make people aware about each and every single detail of how the body or the organization or the agency is operating. It is like to bring in transparency and accountability, as all of you are aware. Yes, case study based questions I have incorporated, Vivek. Okay. Vivek, also I have discussed case study last week, just after civil services values. So how about you revisit those sessions? Have you attended those sessions, Vivek? Okay, there are two Viveks, so don't get confused. The other Vivek. Yes. So have you attended those sessions? So why I'm skipping the whole slide, Prashant, because in governance, the chapter has been taught. So why not to teach you ethics, like code of ethics and code of conduct? Why not to give you some extra information? Huh? Why to repeat myself? Why should two teachers repeat the same information? So factual information can be shown and one can move ahead. Become a smart learner. Like, in this exam, donkeys are also running and horses are also running. Be a horse. And how do you be a horse? You know which areas are factual, you can do it quickly. And which areas are analytical and you need to go slow. And notice whenever I go for analysis, I just slow my pace down. Right? When I have to critically analyze, reflect, give examples, a topic that has been just taught barely a month back. So why should I repeat myself? Okay. Okay, so with respect to like case study, Vivek, I have discussed the approach in the previous, if you can recall, in the last week, and I discussed it with a lot of case studies. And the case studies comprised of tentative situations also, what steps needs to be followed in case studies associated with, we can say, proposed by me, and also case studies which were given by UPSC exam. I will be discussing again case study tomorrow towards the end, like how to solve certain case studies which have been asked by UPSC examination. If you want to see the slides, I can show a glimpse of it, but I'm not going to discuss it right now. So I've given you an exhaustive trend analysis of the case study. If you see that, all these case studies that have been asked, what topics have been prioritized. So mal taiyar hai, abhi padhana nahi hai. That's the only thing. Okay, so this is what you can see, the case studies there. Okay, there are these questions, how you have to respond to the situation. So I have to discuss all this. All this has been prepared for all of you. All right, just have faith. Okay, and one Vivek was present, second Vivek was absent, it seems. So Vivek, the second Vivek who raised this question, please recall, please visit that session, which has been discussed in greater detail related to case studies. If you don't finish that session, it will be tough for you to connect with tomorrow's session, because tomorrow's session will be associated with approach, directly how to approach the question. Methods and techniques has been taught in the previous session. So methods and techniques I won't be repeating in greater detail tomorrow. I will be only focusing on approach. All right. So please attend that. Yes, thank you, Nutan. The session number is session 7. Okay, session 7, when I had completed a bit of like ethics and civil services values, when I felt that some basics have been built, then on the basis of those basics, case studies could have been discussed. So I did it then. So deal with that, finish that, so that you can connect. And now rest of you can also see that this segment has been well dealt in terms of RTI. Even though it has been covered in governance, this is something which is also like provided by me. So anything like corporate governance is also associated with GS paper 2 governance. So one of the students informed in the morning batch that corporate governance could not be taken because of lack of time in the governance section. So you can lift the detailed analysis which I gave you and use it over there. That's how two teachers support in the same game and create a wholesome picture of your success. Okay, because both ways, like we are supposed to support each other. Some topic one teacher will teach, like suppose poverty and hunger is there in the syllabus. Maybe social justice teacher teaches you poverty and hunger, and then the component of unemployment, okay, and we can say disparity is there in economy. So that is associated with poverty. Like human development index is associated in economy. Human development is absence of interventions which is there in poverty. So the chapter of poverty gets connected to economy also. So the wisdoms you gain in social justice, use it in economy. That's how you blend the wisdoms and prepare a wholesome approach, right? No, Prithvi Raj. Luckily, you are the only one. Prithvi Raj is all curious. Is there any other Prithvi Raj also? So, all right, Padmavati. Glad to know you are also there. All right. So, just have a wholesome preparation in terms of fixing the blocks, more like a jigsaw puzzle. All right. Now, so as I was discussing about this, like showing you basically the component of Citizens Charter, this diagram, all of you can see this. So it was associated with what are the core segments, core possibilities associated with a Citizens Charter. Again, Prashant, especially for you, I'm just showing the information, what is there in the slide, a topic that has been taught, and that too in great detail. Just showing that from like ethics, how it is supported further, so that if I'm not like unnecessarily elaborating upon it, you don't feel that you are missing out on something majorly. So here you can see I've given Citizens Charter, origin of Citizens Charter, how it came into existence. Origin is not important, just know what Citizens Charter is. 6 principles of Citizens Charter is important. Okay. Objectives of Citizens Charter is important when we are talking about it. Okay, so important. If you have not studied it like this or not prioritized it in the form of a list, then please go through this given subsegment. Memorize the 6 points, no shortcuts to it. So, like it is related to quality, choice, standard, value, accountability, transparency. Now, have you seen a Citizens Charter, people, in your life? Yes. Have you ever seen the Citizens Charter in your life? Oh, very good, very good. Few of you have seen that. Ambesh and Sachin and Sudipto. Okay, all right. Kaushik. A lot of you now are saying yes. All right, good, good, good. Citizens Charter is like, it's like a huge notice board, and the notice board incorporates all key information related to how to go about with uh, dealing with situations, filling a form, getting some information, getting some work done. Like let us say outside a bank, if there is a Citizens Charter, so the bank will be informing you all the information, how to open an account, how to activate an account, how to deposit money, how to withdraw money, how to digitally use an account, how to, like let us say, apply for a grievance, so grievance redressal, how that can happen, how many officials are there, who is responsible for what, everything a Citizens Charter can hold. Okay, so that's why I have provided you, yes, in post office also you can see that, yes, that's there. So Payal, Nikhil, all you people have seen that in post office, great. Here, that's why I provided you this citizens charter, one of the tentative citizens charter. So here you can see who are the people who are like holding the position, it's there. Then mother and child healthcare, and like this specific clinic, where is it? Then like laboratory services, what are there, what kind of lab services, what kind of tests, what kind of programs are incorporated under lab service, OPD service and IPD service. OPD, like outpatient department, and inpatient department. Outpatient means patients who are not kept in the hospital, they just come, they get a test done, they are provided with with medicines, and they are sent, they are outpatient. Inpatient are those patients which are like admitted in the hospital and their treatment goes on. Okay, so that's inpatient, outpatient. So related to them, OPD, IPD services. Then you can see emergency services, some details related to it. Again, with respect to what is the office, and what is the, like, let us say, the address of the office, all that is given over here. What is the responsibility, the address of the office, so basic information which all of you can see. Okay, now this is the image of a citizens charter. A citizens charter can be associated with any department, it can be associated with any, like we can say, any initiative per se when we are speaking of it. So here, with respect to citizens charter, when we are discussing about this, you can see there are 6 principles which are associated with citizens charter, which has been enlisted here. With respect to citizens charter, further when we are moving ahead, we can see there are objectives which it is supposed to fulfill. So citizens charter is bringing quality. Why? Because people are informed, so they know how to negotiate for their rights. That's the analysis you need to develop. Choice, because people, when they are aware of what options are there, they can exercise their choice. So it is bringing freedom, it is ensuring fundamental rights. Again, you can see standards, what to expect means you like come to know about roles and duties of the concerned officials. Then you can see value for taxpayers money, because a taxpayer, when the person has paid the money, the person knows what services are provided by which body, which department. Transparency and accountability. So when officials are aware that their responsibility is put up on the board, everyone can read it, they cannot shy away from the responsibility by pushing the person from table to table, go ask him, go ask that ma'am. No, it is clear who is going to do what. So you cannot run away from your responsibility, you have to be accountable, you have to be responsible. Then transparency gets ensured. How? Because a person becomes aware of the rules, regulations, procedures. So reflect, this is something which is associated with reflection. That's why I've written important, because it helps when you reflect, you can connect it with, like, from fundamental rights to governance to, like, the civil services values to the rights of citizens as not beneficiaries but as stakeholders when they participate, all of it, like, starts getting created. Okay, then when you're further moving ahead with citizens charter in India and the objectives of citizens charter, so what are the goals? So the goal is the same, similar, like when you're ensuring quality and all. So you're improving quality, you are like mandate the concerns of the government organization, means it is ensuring the concerns. Okay, it is explaining how to get in touch, how you are getting in touch with the officials, and how to get remedy to any problem, any issue you are suffering from. Then what are the components? Remember, you can draw it and memorize. I would have, if I would have been in your place, I would have drawn a citizens charter, maybe I've seen in my life. So there is vision statement, mission statement. Remember, in school diaries, college diaries also, this used to be there, vision, mission. In UPSC interview also, it is sometimes asked, what is the logo of your school, what is the mission statement of your school? You should remember all this. Okay, that shows that what values have nurtured you, what ideals have nurtured you, like what has shaped you over the years. It's not necessary they will ask, but it can be a question, because in the past these questions have been asked from, like, UPSC aspirants who like went to the interview, just to check whether they are connected with their roots and what has nurtured them over the years. Okay, so just know that vision statement, mission statement, then identification of services, what services are provided to you. Okay, so enlistment of services, so there is vision statement, there's mission statement, you can think of that. Then providing the time frame of each service, so within what time period those services will be provided. Providing information about public grievance redressal mechanism, if there is any problem, whom to reach out, how to reach out. Okay, again you can see vision statement of central board of indirect, like taxes, CBIC. So this is like more like an example. The mission statement of CBIC, you can see this. Okay, so this is just like an example that you can like see it and you can imagine how it is created. Citizens charter, then evaluation of citizens charter, this is again important for all of you. I'm not writing very important because citizens charter qualifies more like a 10 marker question. Okay, not a 15 marker. That's why factual questions, a bit of critical reflection can be there. And there are so many other subtopics which are far more important, that if examiner is making an easy question, then we'll touch citizens charter. And if this topic is touched, short question. That's it. Okay. So evaluation is what? There is centralization. Centralization what? Now this is a massive problem. They will make a common, like suppose SBI is making its citizens charter. So the citizens charter which is there in, like let us say Kolkata, is not the same citizens charter which is needed in Bhopal, or which is needed in, like let's say Chennai, or which is needed in Arunachal Pradesh. Because like in different states people can have different levels of education, awareness, empowerment. So why to have a centralized pattern? As per the local needs, suitability and conditions, we can always bring in modification in the citizens charter. But no, they will have one pattern. Suppose if it is in official language, then official Hindi will be so technical Hindi that even a Hindi reader cannot understand what is written because of the technical jargons written. Commonsensical language, people's language, is sometimes it is not used, like it, I don't know why it is not used. So that's why the possibility of making it people friendly sometimes goes missing. That's why centralization is making it like it is associated with routine activities, it is not associated with actually reaching out to the people. It's not actually people friendly. Okay, so this issue can be associated with people friendly, it won't be people friendly. That can be a challenge. Again, lack of training. Employees, the employees who are there, they don't have a training that how they need to be making people aware of the citizens charter. So they will be not making an effort to make the people aware of this is the citizens charter and put good use to it. So that's something which, yes, one size never fits everyone, but when we are talking about this given dimension, this is something which is associated with centralization of citizens charter, which comes as a, we can consider, criticism of it. Okay, so lack of awareness, people are not aware. Awareness campaigns are not there about citizens charter so that people can use it. Sometimes unrealistic goals are laid down on citizens charter. Within 2 hours your accounts would be open. If the paperwork is not fulfilled, how the account can be opened? Now the fellow will fight. Here it is written on citizens charter, why are you not opening my account? And the SBI guy will be like, the server is down, come tomorrow. So they will fight over the every day your server is down and you did that work for that fellow. Oh, at that time the server was working. Go. So you can see that unrealistic goals, you have to like bring in the possibility of transparency and accountability and achievable goals, whereby you are talking about under what circumstance the goals can be fulfilled. So be clear about that also. Again, lack of publicity, the same thing, awareness, publicity. Poor complaint redressal, even though the citizen charter discusses how the grievance redressal would take place, no one takes it that seriously. So what are the lessons learned associated with citizens charter? What should be done to amend citizens charter? So this is again important, because this is the reflection that goes into the answer. All right, so this is it that I have created for all of you. Code of ethics and code of conduct is something that we will be starting tomorrow. All right, so I hope you were able to connect with what all has been taught today. And code of ethics and code of conduct is another very interesting journey, which we will be like reflecting upon tomorrow. All right, then. Good night, all of you. Take care.